Welcome to your Big Girls Attack on Titan podcast. I'm Momtaku.
And I'm Luna.
This month, we're excited to welcome back our friend Puppet. Puppet's been a frequent guest on the podcast. He's also a member of the poll team. He used to do the chapter bingos and also worked as a translator. So, Puppet, it's really good to have you back.
Thanks for having me on again. It's always a blast.
We're also excited to have longtime Tumblr meta writer Hamliet join us. Welcome, my friend. It's good to have you on the podcast.
Hey, I'm really excited to be here.
So we always kick things off with our chapter impressions. Just take a minute to give our love it, hate it, any disappointments, how would we rate it? So Puppet, why don't we start with you? What were your chapter impressions?
Yeah, I really enjoyed the chapter. The initial group I went to go talk to about it with after I finished it was a lot more negative, which made me think the fandom overall was.
You calling us out?
Yeah, you showed up eventually in that group. But the poll has been open a few days, and it seems to be showing that the chapter is pretty popular. Not the most popular we've ever done. I think it's around 13th right now for chapters we've pulled. But it has a lot of 4s and 5s, so I'm glad to see the fandom reacting positively, even some pockets who typically might not like the kind of things this chapter had to offer.
And what about you, Hamliet? What did you think?
Yeah, I had a really strong positive reaction at first too. And looking back at it, I'm like, yeah, I read some criticisms from friends and I was like, yeah, I can see where those criticisms are coming from and don't necessarily disagree. But overall, I still have quite a positive opinion. I think I would have said 4 out of 5.
Okay, Luna, what about you?
Apparently, I was part of the group. Puppet saw the initial reactions off. Yeah, I'm very surprised at how positively this chapter is being received by the fandom, because I wouldn't put it at haha pie levels of bad, but to me it was not a good chapter. And I think even looking at how many chapters there are left, this might have actually been the final straw for me in saying I don't think this story will have a satisfying ending. That being said, there were some things I did really enjoy in this chapter, so it wasn't a complete crap fest for me. But I think I gave it a 2 out of 5 on the chapter poll rating. What about you, Momtaku? What was your reaction?
Well, I was part of the group railing on it too, because I just think that's fun. That's what we do. We get the chapter and we complain violently sometimes. But yeah, I've been working really hard the last week to kind of separate my own personal disappointment from the actual content. So I think this chapter disappointed me, not because of the content exactly, more like it sort of changed my vision of the series. I was always one of those people who was kind of optimistic about how the ending was going to happen, and just seeing all those races trampled to death. I should have seen it coming, but like you always say, Luna, wrong manga, right? I clearly misinterpreted something along the way. So yeah, it was a hard one for me. It was really hard for me, and I don't know, I feel like in some ways my joy has been sucked from the series, but I want to get it back. And that's one reason why I really wanted Puppet and Hamliet as guests, because from talking to them and reading Hamliet's post, I knew that they saw it a little differently, and I want to get some of my happiness back. So thanks again for joining us.
I'm very happy Puppet and Hamliet are here too, because obviously they're part of the majority, so you guys deserve to be heard.
I'm sorry, guys.
Actually, something you just said, Momtaku, made me think of something I said. Do you remember I talked about the original Final Fantasy VII ending?
I know.
Yeah, where the entire world got destroyed and then the ending scream.
Spoiler alert for Final Fantasy.
If you haven't played it by now, you're never... Anyway, there's a meteor, hits the planet, destroys everything, and then you have the final screen, and then you hear the laughter of children. Which, if this chapter is any indication, I mean, we did have a really big focus on babies and young kids and parent-child relationships.
Didn't we? We really did.
Almost like it's a major theme.
Yeah, almost like children are a theme. Who would have ever thought that?
Yep. Anyway, so That was my prediction a long time ago. Like, yeah, full annihilation, but there will be some hope at the end.
I didn't want that, and now I'm thinking, yep, I immediately thought about you when I saw that, and, that how much grimmer my vision of the ending has gotten.
But apparently, Puppet and Hamliet are like, yay, this is good. Fun times.
No, not at all.
I'm joking.
It's more like it just like it went pretty much was like exactly what I expected to happen, which is just there's a lot of destruction, but that doesn't necessarily mean that like there's no hope or even that Eren will succeed in his entire vision, and I don't think he will.
I think it had something for no matter which side of the debate you fall on. It had rumbling destruction if you're like, yay, genocide, I love Eren killing everyone. It had the Alliance showing up as the hope of humanity if you want them to win. So I think everyone has something to be satisfied from, even if you don't like the way certain things were handled.
It had world building, yay. Meet great people in far off lands and watch them die instantly.
World building or destroying.
Yeah. And of course, it had that very first page, Historia. So
does this mean that you have to wear a shirt with a design by Renan's choice?
So we should probably explain that. So obviously, I was one of the more vocal proponents of fake pregnancy, and somebody in our podcast server, Renan, and I did a wager on it. I was convinced enough that it was a fake pregnancy that I would do something kind of humiliating if I lost the wager. So I don't know that he's decided what I'm not ready to concede yet. I am still. I'm not there yet.
You're like
But
Trump.
if I do
You're
lose the
not
bet,
conceding.
I'm not conceding yet.
Like, do you need like a press conference outside Four Seasons landscaping?
Yeah.
I concede. It will be in front
In
of.
a sex shop next door, and you'll be like, no, the pregnancy is fake. God damn it.
Pennywise the clown is in this chapter. I think a fake pregnancy is possible.
Exactly.
Who knows? Yeah.
I'm not ready to concede on it yet. I'm still waiting for a twist. Anyway, I guess I feel like I've already talked out on this topic just online and on Andrew Allstar's chapter discussion. So I would love to hear somebody's thoughts beyond my own. Hamliet, were you surprised by this development?
No. So I mean, I would have in some ways liked for it to be a fake pregnancy, but I never really thought it was. At the same time, I'm not like to introduce it with one page of Historia in horrible pain, like crying out, but we can't even hear whether she's saying anything or not. And just like having a crowd of people who don't know her as a person around her like cottage or whatever. The farmer Kun who doesn't like even know her very well, presumably, because we haven't seen any of that in the room, and like it felt really lonely. It felt really objectifying. That was my biggest complaint about the chapter, was that page. I didn't like it at all.
What about you, Puppet?
I think that Isayama will eventually reveal something about it that will make it a little bit better and give some character reason for Historia that is more congruent with the Historia we know and love. I think that's hinted at in 130 when we get kind of half the conversation between her and Eren, but he was kind of teasing us and not showing us the whole conversation. That said, his handling of it in the interim period has still been really, really poor, and it won't be worth it even if he does have a reveal like that. It reminds me a little bit of how he handled Annie and Ymir, Ymir particularly. She had a problem in the story because if she had not gotten taken out of the story, she could have just told our main cast about all the secrets of Marley, and that was too early for that reveal. And so he took her out, and then what do you know, as soon as we got that information, the next chapter we got more on Ymir and her backstory. So I think it's similar with Historia, where if we did actually get anything more substantial with her, it would ruin the plot twist Isayama has coming. But like I said, I still don't think it'll be worth it in the end with how he's handled her thus far.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I think this chapter made me realize that I've maybe been giving Isayama a bit too much credit when it comes to writing women, because I was always quite pleased with how he handled things and shying away of the more sexist representation his peers have when it comes to female characters. But thinking about it, I always thought, or well, this past week, I thought his male characters, Reiner, Eren, Zeke, Grisha, even, they got a lot of backstory, they got a lot of weight to them, and then the female characters are kind of just there until they're not. And I don't want to minimize, the efforts that he's done, because obviously Historia went through a lot of development in what's it called again, the Uprising arc, and I'd say there's a lot that he did well with Gabby, but I think overall it's not like he absolutely doesn't know how to write women, but there's part of me that thinks he doesn't give them the same time of day, or at least the same attention he does his male characters. Especially with Historia at this point, I'm not enjoying it. I did like her talk with Eren because it reminded me that Freckle Ymir did have a big influence on her life, but I'm kind of missing that in all her actions since the time skip, basically.
Yeah, we've had 26 chapters and 4 lines, and I think I even said it last month that if Historia was in this chapter, it was gonna be a shock value type thing. I was really hoping she would be the one to kick off the new volume because I thought that would give Isayama a chance to step away from the action, which was very exciting, and instead focus on developing her a little bit. I think she and Zeke both being kind of teased and held at arm's length. Historia now for 26 months, and Zeke since the Paths chapters in the 20s. As a somebody that reads the series every month, it gets exhausting. And I think that that's the comment in my discussions of this. I have yet to meet anybody who says it's been well done, which I'm glad about. Nobody has said, "Wow, this is great." They all agree it's kind of skeevy or whatever. The second most common thing I've gotten is just people just don't care anymore. Like she's been gone too long. At this point, it's just whatever. It's like too long, not enough. I do think that Isayama in general sometimes when he's holding on to these reveals has a really hard time balancing his urge to keep all his cards hidden close to his chest and just a little bit more information to keep the audience interested. And like I was it you, Puppet, that was saying it, or Luna, about it feels like Annie again. Annie just didn't matter for so long, and when she came back it was nice to see her, but kind of like that ship had sailed. Although actually this time the ship did sail, didn't it?
Yes, it did.
Hamliet, you've written a little bit about this. I haven't touched the Historia subject. Like, I just haven't even addressed it. Any thoughts on what happens next?
So I have so many asks in my inbox about Historia, and I'm honestly like ignoring the vast majority of them because I'm like, there's not a lot to answer. Like my opinions are pretty much the same in that I don't think she'll die. I think the only way she could have important impact on the plot at this point is just to like do something with Emir Fritz, but I don't even know whether we have enough time for that to even make it like emotional and like emotionally impactful for her character at this point. But my guess is that she'll have the baby and her ending will be to like live happily with her child or something. But I don't know. It's the other thing that I could see happening is that one of the Titans Titan characters dies, most likely like either Piek or Zeke, and the baby inherits it somehow, and they somehow know this from some, I don't know how that would work, but I'm sure it would happen at some point. Um, and then like
Mhm.
that is motivation for Historia to enter the paths and be like, Eren, stop this.
Hmm.
But I don't love that idea. It's just something that I can see happening because at this moment it's like called like even the chapter's title is like the depths of despair, and so like it's the like nadir, like the lowest point in this story. And so I would hope that like okay, things have to start looking up for the last few chapters, I would assume. So I'm hoping this is Historia's low point as well because I don't see how we can get worse.
I was reading some meta on Tumblr. Somebody talked about Historia kind of being like shoehorned into a thematic message that didn't necessarily fit her character. Was that you?
I'm not sure it was me. I think I did allude to that, but I think other people have said similar things.
Mm.
Yeah, I felt like like my worst case scenario for her right now is just that she has the baby and lives on to be a good mom, but she, like, that's all it is like a symbolic the world continues type thing. And that is something I just really don't want, because she never wanted to be, the whole point of her character was that she didn't want to be a symbol. So that would be an ending that I find absolutely horrific. See, I'm sounding super negative right now, but I actually don't feel very negative about the chapter.
I promise, guys, they like the chapter. I promise.
If you visit my blog, you'll find that critique is like one of my favorite things, so that's why I'm like generally heavy on the critique, but I really liked it.
Actually, if you don't mind, let me go ahead and plug you. Which fandoms are you involved in?
I'm involved in Bungo Stray Dogs, Boku no Hero Academia, SNK, obviously, and Moshang Tongshu novels.
And you've written for Banana Fish, and I mean,
Yes,
your
Banana
fandom list.
Fish, Game of Thrones.
Tokyo Ghoul.
Tokyo Ghoul was my first one that I started writing essays on. I, in theory, could write for anything if I've seen it. So.
I am marvel at how many things you write about, and you write so well about them. So just a plug for Hamliet, we will link to her Tumblr page in our description. If any of those fandoms are ones that you are interested in, you will find any number of posts discussing the anchors. I read the first part of Tokyo Ghoul, but I feel like I kept on top of it because I follow you. And
Oh,
like I
yay.
got the best parts of the series from Tokyo Ghoul from you. So I do appreciate that about you. Okay, so Puppet, do you have anything to add about Historia? Do you have any silver lining to the part of the chapter I hate more than anything else? Any theories about how this could end well? No pressure or anything.
The pressure is more on Isayama than me because he has to actually come up with it. I'd say, for our perspective, we should just wait and see on Isayama, and we can criticize him in the meantime, obviously. But I do think we'll get an answer that is better than some answers people have theorized, especially early on in the pregnancy.
Yeah, the both of you have more hope for a satisfying ending for Historia than I do at this point, because I have absolutely no idea what's in store for her, what her purpose is, what her story's narrative is going to be. And I don't think we'll be seeing much of her until the end of the manga, honestly.
I mean, we're at the end of the manga, though. We've got 4 chapters.
Exactly. So we're in the action now. I don't think he's gonna take us away from the action, take a break from that.
I feel like he does that all the time, though, honestly.
I know, but we only have 4 chapters. Probably.
I feel like it could be mixed in with an epilogue of sorts.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah, more Eren point of view, and some people would say that two are entangled. Eren and Historia point of view might be the same chapter. I mean, at the least we know they had that conversation, so that could be the case there, whatever the relationship is. So I feel like we'll get answers on that. Like the last final big mystery of this mystery series will be held off until the final chapter or two.
And the big mystery being who's the daddy, or
That's another thing Mom was saying about certain things getting old and the fandom just grows tired of it, like Annie being in the crystal as well as the Historia pregnancy. Like the baby daddy who's the father discussions were fun for like a month or two. It got old quick. Even the parts of the fandom that love those series the most are just old. Everyone has their opinions, and we just want answers.
I do wonder if it's even going to be answered. I think that we're supposed to assume it's Farmer-kun, and it just might be left at that. And
Yeah.
I don't know that there's ever going to be any huge reveal that, I mean, I think oh well, my ever pessimistic view is that the people that feel like Eren is the father will never be given clear enough evidence to dissuade them from that theory.
It could end up similar to the Eren saying, "Have you seen me eat our dad yet?" to Zeke. You know, because some people are theorizing that could mean that we'll go back to that and get some big thing. And if we don't, we can just assume that Grisha changed his mind because he heard Carla died. You know, there's room for a big twist, but it could also be just a basic thing that the story's provided already.
Exactly.
I am curious though, because we haven't mentioned it in a long time, but we did that, guessing game where we asked everyone who follows us to take this little, poll, I should say, to guess who is going to die and who's going to live by the end of the series, and a couple of other questions. Who did you guys answer was in the final panel, if you took it? that is. Maybe I should have led with that.
I have a very unpopular answer, so I probably shouldn't say it.
No, you should say it. Let's hear it.
Momtaku, you feel like you know. I think it's John.
Right. I do too, actually.
For some reason, in the manga, they are supposedly look similar enough where John can dress himself up like Eren at different times, even though I think they look nothing alike. So that could be the reason it resembles Eren. And John had recently had like daydreams about a child, and then there's the whole John and Mikasa thing.
It's funny that John and Eren are compared to looking similar, and then everyone says John looks like a horse face. Doesn't that kind of insult Eren too? I would say John is third most likely in my mind. I don't think it's that much of a crack theory. I used to say Eren, and I think that's what I put on the poll, which I bombed, by the way. Like, I got all the deaths wrong. Like, the next chapter, a bunch of people died who I didn't mark or something like that. So I used to think it's Eren. I now think it's Grisha in a flashback, but I'm not confident in anything about that.
Who's the second most likely one then?
It would be Grisha first, and then Eren, and then John. I still think Eren's possible.
Yeah.
And I like the idea of Grisha and John, but then the baby, that here, look, there is a baby. Let me put a glow around the baby. Let me put more glow around the baby. Like I was just like, I know, probably wishful thinking, but now I'm not sure. But I was either Grisha or John.
And I think it's the baby from this chapter that was crowd surfing.
But you think the baby in the final panel is the baby, or the adult is the baby grown up with its own baby?
Ooh, babyception.
Let me put a baby inside your baby. That sounded really wrong, by the way, now that I think about it.
Like, I would love for there to be a twist on the baby in the final, and I feel like that's another realization I've had is that I keep thinking, oh, there'll be a twist. Oh, there'll be a twist, and there's just never a twist. Eren's motivation. Oh, there'll be a twist, and I'm just so tired of waiting for twists that I feel defeated about that as well. So, boy, I'm a joy this month.
Has anyone died since Hanji, by the way?
I don't think major characters.
No.
No, and in fact, me and Crunch, one of the poll team, were looking through the past several chapters, and 133 is the last chapter since 111 to not have any on-screen death, and 111 was the first one since before the festival.
Oh, okay. Well, listen, it might still work out in your favor, puppet, depending on who lives and dies and what we presume will be the last volume of this manga. You could win some nice merch.
How's that? Is everybody so hosed that even because I know I gave up. Like mine is so far gone at this point.
Oh, mine is still A-okay.
Oh.
Except for Magath. Magath I got wrong. But everyone else, Hanji, I said dead. Who else has died? Shadis. That one I got correct, so.
Jazz and Samuel and Flock.
Oh, Flock, yeah, for sure.
Did anyone say Flock would live?
Marking Samuel as dead, it would have been a Chad move because he was marked dead in the guidebook already. So marking a dead character as being alive and then dead would have been an absolute baller theory.
I didn't realize that. So he was resurrected just to get killed again. Nice.
Yes.
Yeah, like the wiki would have gone back and edited him to be alive, but he died the same chapter, so it didn't really change anything.
I hope the wiki at least put a note that, he was dead and then alive and then dead again, because that's pretty cool.
I'm sure they added that, yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's all we have to say about that. Unless Momtaku wants to complain some more.
I'm done. I am done.
Good.
We're just going to tear that page out of my volume when I get it and not talk about it anymore.
Okay. So next up was more of the rumbling, and it seems like the rumbling has finally, in my opinion, I think, passed beyond Marley into the rest of the world. We see London with a very African population, which I love.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw some more Asians, and we saw the whole field full of people trying to flee away from the rumbling. What do you guys think about the inclusion of more countries and geographic locations and the people there, what they look like and how they are dealing with the situation at hand?
It reminded me of that old army joke, join the army, travel to exotic distant lands, meet exciting people, and kill them. It was like, wow, great seeing this. And then, oh well, that was fun. I felt like it was maybe it was just me. I'm curious what you guys think. I found it a little bit gratuitous. It was like, I don't know that I needed to see it. I mean, parts of me enjoyed it. Like Black London is great, and the fact that they seemed very affluent and wealthy. And, I would have loved to spend more time in Black London, but instead we just saw them being smashed.
Yeah, I think that was something that I didn't necessarily react to the first time I read it, but looking back on it, I'm like, yeah, I feel like again, it's Isayama's pacing striking again in that I don't think that all the panels were super necessary. Like I think what was it, chapter like 131, where we saw Eren's mind and he was just like killing everyone. I think that was kind of enough to get the whole idea of the rumbling. Like I'm not sure that we needed all of this, but I think it again reinforces that Isayama wanted a chapter of despair. So
Yeah, I think this is not necessarily about the gruesomeness of the rumbling. I think that one was reserved for 131. This is more to illustrate the scope of it.
yeah, yeah. I didn't think it was the most necessary thing that Isayama has ever drawn, but I didn't necessarily mind it. It depends on like if I find like the rest of the chapters seeming like kind of rushed, I'll probably have like slightly more negative feelings on it. But right now, I'm okay with it. So.
The best thing about the London we saw is that it raises the chances for John Boyega to be cast in the dub as Onyankopon,
Yes.
because he's British and so he could use his default accent, and he's recently been tweeting about Onyankopon, so we'll see.
I mean, we know he wants to, right?
He did. He tweeted a
Yeah.
picture of Anyon Kapan and was like, Mappa, you have one job. I mean,
Yeah.
he's in. We got John Boyega in.
Let's do it.
Looking at the poll for the different locations, we asked which of the new locales have you found most interesting, and I've seen the most discussion about London. It's the most exciting to me personally, so I was expecting it to be bigger in the poll. It's number 2 right now, behind the Cliffside of Chaos by 6%, which, I mean, that was just like a flat plain with a cliff. The cliffs itself are cool enough, I guess. It's kind of like the cliffs of Dover in England, though if this is the same England type place that London is, we just saw, I don't know why everyone in London is black and everyone, I don't know how far away the cliffs of Dover are, but, just over the fence, everyone there's white. I don't know what's up with that. But the Cliffside of Chaos is apparently more exciting than London.
Wow.
I wonder if the people who voted for that saw also the Where's Waldo.
Pennywise.
Yeah. Well, there's more than just there was Wolverine in there.
There's Wolverine. I think Rorschach from Watchmen might have been there.
Have you
Like,
seen that
yeah.
yet, Hamliet? Have you seen that somebody went through that crowd and actually found unmistakable Pennywise?
I saw the Pennywise thing, but I did like go and find out, but I didn't see Wolverine or the others.
Yeah.
I was like, Pennywise actually kind of like, okay, it's definitely a meme, but it's also kind of like, well, the whole point in it is that Pennywise is like something that like preys on children. So you could tie it thematically to the story.
When they were all holding the baby up, I was like, no, put it back down. Pennywise is right there. He's going to eat it.
I'm like, no.
I know in the poll server we discussed this pretty extensively, whether or not to include it. And I think me, you, and Crunch and Humble was involved as well. We were all more disgusted with it than anything, so we left it out. And I think it was you that brought out the fact that the director of it is the one that was slated to direct the live action movie. It could have been a nod to him. And I'd known that at one time, but I'd forgotten it. So if that was a nod to him and to the connection between, the live action, whatever, I find it slightly more forgivable, but it's still one of those things that kind of just made me, it was a very bitter taste in my mouth to see humor injected into that moment.
It's disappointing to me that the Hollywood movie seems to have fallen through a little bit. The director, Andy, I don't want to butcher his last name, seems to be moving on to other projects, because I think he would have been a great choice. I mean, Pennywise has a great mix of horror and humor, which the Titans themselves have, especially in early seasons, like running around looking goofy, dancing, but they're still terrifying. And that's basically what he captured with Pennywise from the It movies, so it would have been a good way to handle the Titans if he was involved.
Yeah, we haven't had any updates on the movie whatsoever, right? For the past year at least?
Yeah, I don't think since they announced that he was attached to it, we haven't had any updates.
Hmm. Yeah, I think I was on board, or I felt the same way as Puppet did when I first found out about Pennywise being in that crowd. I was like, that's a bit too much. But I think at the moment it's just like a fun Easter egg, in the
Yeah, I
only
went on
reference to
a
the director, like because I didn't really notice it on my first read through, and you kind of have to look at the page like in detail, like scan all the people to really notice him standing there.
Yeah, I wish I had been blessed with ignorance on it.
Yeah.
Now all of our listeners have to know about it too.
Yeah.
But yeah, when I first found out about it, I went on a super long rant about not liking when Isayama ruins the world and memes like this.
I
And
promise you
yeah,
guys, they
I'm not a
really
big
do
fan of
like
it.
this chapter. I promise. I promise.
So, Puppet, you didn't appreciate having the Attack on High School cast in the memory shard either, I guess?
I'm fine with memes that don't really ruin things in world. If they make sense. Like there was that one kid in Marley who was making a face from a meme or something. That's fine because kids make funny faces. Or when Titans look like actors, like the Game of Thrones cast or Better Call Saul or the voice actors, that's fun. Titans can look funny. But when literally Pennywise and Wolverine are there, it kind of ruins it for me. And the cast on Titan thing, like that's a fun spinoff. I like it, but being somehow canon to the story is a little bit weird. And I like memes if they make sense, and if they don't make sense, well, I just don't like things that don't make sense, I guess.
Maybe the people on that cliff were having like a cosplay
Yeah, a convention right
convention before
before.
There
they're
you
being
go.
driven
Yeah.
off the cliff.
You fixed it for me. Thank you.
Because we do know clowns are part of Marleyan culture, so it fits.
I will say this, the double spread with all the Colossals coming, and you have the enormous sea of people falling down the cliffs. That was one of my favorite panels this entire chapter, if not, no, not my favorite, but one of my favorite. Because of like what the chapter title said, this gave me the feeling of despair. This is like, you're going to die and there is no escape. You're stuck. The people falling off or jumping off the cliffs reminded me a bit of people jumping out of the twin towers because they didn't want to burn to death. So that gave me that same feeling of dread and despair, yeah, as I had when I saw that for the first time. Did you guys have the same emotions with this panel or any other panel in this chapter for that matter?
Yeah, I also kind of had that reaction to that panel. I think it was also one of my favorites this chapter. And I think it was like it's kind of symbolic of the series in like a lot of ways, in that Paradise Island has basically been like Titans are marching towards them and there's no place to go besides the walls for a while, and then like now it's just the dynamic is reversed to the rest of the world. But the people are still they still want to a lot of the people still want to live. They're trying to save the children through the baby, and just they're doing what they can to survive and still fighting even when things look hopeless. So it gave me despair, but also kind of like an okay, there's some light there.
Yeah, I had some similar thoughts about the baby being saved, although I initially didn't catch the babies are the future motif that upon rereading, he's pretty clearly going for with Historia and then this, and then showing the mother at Fort Salta holding a baby. I just thought it was, that mother wanting a baby to be saved and everyone coming together in that moment of despair, which I'm sure most people have noticed this by now, but that mother was a pregnant mother that Eren saw when he was in Marley. We can see in 131. Isayama's really
Oh.
good at bringing back every single minor character, Kaya, Luis, all them. Unless your name is Rico, then you don't exist anymore.
I looked at that and it does look like her. Like that's yeah.
Wow. I didn't notice that.
That makes it so much worse that this new mom that was smiling with her partner a couple chapters ago is now being forced off the cliff. Like it just I can't even uh what's your Spider-Man 2 reference? Maybe that'll make me feel better.
Yeah, some people are guessing that the baby might be saved. Like if the Alliance is able to stop Eren before the Colossals get to the cliffside, we'll like flash back and see who the baby was saved. It's a thing in story sometimes that they'll give you like a very specific person that can be saved by like the superhero's actions to give you some connection. and this was done not very well in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. In the whole movie, Aunt May has this irrelevant storyline where she's like working as a nurse, and so while Spider-Man's fighting Electro at the power plant at the end of the movie in the climax, we're anchored to Aunt May, like, oh no, her power went out and all her patients are going to die. And there's also two random planes that are going to collide because their power went out or something. And like we're flashing back between those and the final fight, and no one really cares about either of those. And so I feel like if we go back and the baby's saved, it would kind of remind me of that, where it's trying to anchor us to something, but we're maybe more interested in the final fight.
Yeah, I think that's fair as well.
Not to say I hope the baby dies, but
I guess for me, like, I don't see how the baby lives. Okay, they saved it for a few minutes, they tossed it back. You know, those titans are right there. And maybe it was you, Puppet, who mentioned that if this goes to Path's realm next, that time stops. And if they defeat Eren in Paths, that was it you? Am I quoting you or somebody else?
I think that was either Humble or Crunch. That was
Okay.
someone else, I
Okay, it was
believe.
somebody else. I apologize for. Okay, so Humble or Crunch that this could end, but I don't know. Like this was part of where I felt like this chapter was game over because here you see repentance, you see people trying to save a child, you see people being good, and yet they're all going to get killed anyway. And it really was depressing for me. Like, I do not see this, I don't see any pathway to good in any of this. It just, this chapter felt to me like no matter what happens now, Eren won and it's kind of game over. And I feel like maybe I'm alone in that. Like, I don't know that a lot of people felt like this chapter was game over, but it very much felt like that to me. So if you guys feel differently about that, I'd love to hear it.
I mean, I do feel differently, but I also think your impression is the one Isayama intended to give, with the chapter title being about despair. Like, I do think he wants people to think, like, okay, this is it. But I don't think Eren is going to win if you look at it, well, depending on how you look at it, because I think the reality that SNK has always tried to like balance is like, yeah, maybe the world I do think will be saved, and like many people maybe will survive, but a lot of people will still have died, and they will still have lost like a lot, and probably Eren among them, like, because I don't see Eren making it out of this alive, and so that's a reality too. So even if the world at a large is saved, like the individuals have still lost, and I think that that's kind of sobering and a balance that SNK has always tried to like walk between like the individual and the collective. Yeah, I think this chapter is like kind of reinforcing that there is like, even if they win, which I do think the alliance will win, it's still very tragic.
So you think that what we've seen of the world being destroyed maybe gives us more the impression that it's the whole world being destroyed, but that there are still parts of the world untouched? Or I think the logistics of the Titans kind of get me too. Like, wow, they're fast and they're
Yeah,
everywhere.
I'm like thinking of like, I guess I'm like, yeah, it's a story. Like, I'm not like worried about the logistics of timings and titans and
Hmm.
like whether there's really like enough time or that sort of thing. Because Isayama's never been great with the like strict world building, anyways. So I'm kind of like, it will do what it needs to do to get the thematic point across. I guess like when we're seeing the whole world being rumbled, I'm like, maybe not. Like, I don't necessarily take that as, oh, it's game over, because I just don't trust Isayama's logistics. And I think that the themes of the story matter a little bit more. So
Good point.
It's been a debate for a long time how the story will end. Not just how it will end, but how it should end. Should Eren rumble the entire world and fully succeed? Should the Alliance stop him before he does much destruction at all? I feel like Isayama's going for something in the middle, which you could either call pleasing both sides or failing everyone, where most everyone's going to die, but not everyone. So, like we saw here, the rumblings reached a lot of other nations. So maybe most people die, but then the ones that survive are able to put aside their hate and get peace, or like the types of things that the general was speaking about this chapter. And the remnants of humanity will come together, and we'll have that hopeful ending, even in the despair of how much destruction was caused.
I mean, beautiful and cruel.
I would like that. I would like to think that there's some beauty there. So try not to be. This is like therapy for me, right? This is you guys convincing me that
See, I expected if the Alliance to stop Eren a bit sooner. Like, I did expect Eren to do some damage. I just didn't expect it to be on this scale. But like you guys said, there will be some sort of like positive or hopeful note to end the series on. It won't be death and destruction, and Eren just gets to wee around in the world without nobody in it. That would
Yeah.
seem weird.
Yeah, I don't see that happening either. I see that, I just see a ruined world. So, something that King's Grave pointed out in our Discord, I think he's the first one I saw. He, I assume it's Hizuru, the shrine gate there being very, very, very similar to one that remained standing after the atomic bombing in Hiroshima. That Isayama definitely borrowed kind of that Hiroshima imagery again. We saw that, I think, in the Ramsey chapter with their outlines, their black outlines as they were destroyed. And we're seeing that again. And yeah, that sense of complete devastation. And Hamliet, before we started recording, you mentioned that you actually were there in 2018.
Yeah. I think also like what's interesting is like Torii gates, the type of gate that they are, is supposed to be like a symbol of like transference from this world to the next in Shintoism. So I can see the symbolic meaning of including that, but also it survived one of the worst destructive elements in the world. And so it's kind of also like a symbol of hope at this point.
That's interesting. So when you saw that there, it actually made you saw it as a symbol of hope and not as like just straight architectural element to establish a geography or
No, I think also there's like, I don't want to speak as an expert, but because I'm not, but Hiroshima itself is like the site of the atomic bomb has been turned into a place called like Peace Park. And there are like literally like thousands of like paper cranes that are always hanging there. And it's basically, there's a whole like memorial type thing. And it is seen as like a reminder that destruction is awful, but people will still live through, like, even despite like the basically the world ending there.
mm-hmm.
And so that humans are capable of like great cruelty but also great beauty, because there's so much art there that is absolutely beautiful as well. So I don't know, I was like, when I thought of like the Hiroshima connection, I was like, oh, okay, like it is kind of like a Hiroshima moment in that the world is being destroyed, but I don't necessarily think it means that it can never recover, or that there can't be peace afterwards.
Yeah. The thing is, I wonder if the shrine was also trampled by, or the gate, yeah, was trampled by the Colossals or not, because then it's kind of like, showing that, any little shred of hope you have will be crushed.
I do think, like, okay, Puppet, you're one of those people that pays like crazy close attention to things. When we've seen scenes in the manga of devastation after the Titans pass through, aren't there little things still left standing, or am I imagining that?
No, that's correct. In fact, the first time we see a depiction of, well, the second time. The first time we see a depiction of the rumbling is in 96. Reiner thinks about it, but it's a very small panel. And then in Willie's speech warning about the possibility of the rumbling, we have a full page on it. And we see, the footsteps behind them, and there's a single lamppost that's left,
Okay.
and that's like very clearly standing out. That always stood out to me.
I love Puppet's recall. That's another reason why it's nice to have Puppet.
Yeah. Wow.
I can just be like, what chapter was it when blah, blah, blah,
Yeah,
blah, and Puppet will go, that was 26, page 14. Like, amazing photographic recall of this manga.
That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
You can survive just by standing still in the right spot like a lamppost, I guess. Just put a lampshade on your head like you're at a party and you're good to go.
Well, I remember James in Titan Tea Time, I listened to their podcast. James talked about, like, could you survive it? Like, what did he call it? Something about like a super game of Frogger, or like some kind of like,
yeah.
I mean, I
Just
guess.
treat it like a slalom contest. You just, keep walking or running around the Colossal's feet. just going left, right.
Right, jump from foot to foot and make of
Yeah.
course, the world there'd be nothing on the no food, no anything, but I guess it could happen that somebody could make it through. I don't know. I loved James. James, if you're listening to our podcast, that's still my favorite thing you've ever said. So, and if you don't listen to Titan Tea Time, you might like it. You should because, yeah. Plug.
I mean, it's already up before this podcast for sure.
Yeah, they just posted it as we're recording this.
You've got 2 weeks to listen to it before we're done. So,
luckily, it's not that bad. But yeah, one day we'll upload first. Maybe I will be able to bribe them with Dutch cookies one day.
You need to.
Let's hope that the shrine gate is still standing next chapter. And that, not all hope is lost, like all the blimps were lost. Because, yeah, great, they took all the airships, nobody could flee, and they were gonna defeat that Eren and his Collosals, and then it all went down in flames in 5 seconds. Puppet, you said that the blimps weren't completely useless? Please elaborate.
Well, I think almost pretty much everyone expected the blimps to fail pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Eren obviously has some ranged attacks. No one really expected the beast. They just thought he was going to Warhammer spike them or something. So I don't know if they really let down anyone. The one possible in-world reason I have that they actually helped in some way is they did force Eren to summon the beast to throw the rubble at them and stop them, which then allowed the plane, as they were flying in, to say, oh, there Zeke is, there's a target, let's aim and fall right on him. Now, it is possible Eren would have summoned it anyways to throw at the plane, as we saw him throw at the plane, but I mean, maybe he would have kept it more secret, especially if Zeke is attached to the beast still. But yeah, it gave them a distinct target right away.
So you're saying if Zeke is in that beast titan, then he may have done the world a favor?
Then it was due to the blimps that Eren had to reveal where he was.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Yeah, they weren't caught off guard. They would have been otherwise. It made Eren reveal his hand, basically.
Yeah.
I like it.
Still, from the blimp and the general's perspective, that was like a lot of money being destroyed in like a span of 10 seconds or something, or that's what it felt like when I was reading the chapter.
I don't remember who brought this up, but someone was saying in a lot of shonen and stories like this, it's like the professional military like gets destroyed right away, but then this group of ragtag kids is able to come in and save
the day. That was Aluola.
Yeah.
Aluola said that he, and I agree, like this, I feel a little cheated. I mean, I didn't expect the blimps. They were never going to amount to anything. I knew this, but, I feel a little let down because Yelena in chapter, Puppet, what chapter?
132.
In 132, Yelena kind of made this out like maybe it was like something to at least worry about a little bit. Like, I think Eren will head here, and we got the flashback of their conversation, and, this is a airboat research center, and, could potentially be something to worry about. And it was nothing to worry about. So they didn't even have real bombs. They're like tossing barrels out the back end, which I this is such a small quibble. I honestly don't care, but I wasn't expecting it to go that fast.
I kind of lauged.
Exactly.
I was just like Staples, like, well, that was easy. No, I really don't care. I expected that. And Puppet, your idea about how they might not have been completely useless is actually really cool. I didn't think about that. But yeah, I was just like, okay, haha, let's go on.
I'm checking the 133 poll right now because last chapter, since it was the cliffhanger, we asked if anyone thought they'd be effective. And there was actually a very small percentage that thought they were going to help deal a decisive blow.
Oh.
So let's see how many people thought that. 5.6% thought that the blimps were going to save humanity.
They get that 5.6%. Our heart is with you. We know you must be devastated right now. So basically, the rest of us all thought this would be a nothing moment.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Well, I expected them to at least kill one colossal. I don't think they even did that.
They bonked them on the head. Maybe they confused them.
Well, we see a few small explosions from when the barrels land. I assume they're filled with some sort of explosives or oil or some mix of the two. And we see an explosion kind of on the nape of one colossal, and its head kind of angles. But I mean, we don't see for sure it's dead. But they definitely didn't get more than a handful.
Hashtag you tried.
Yep.
Speaking of Zeke, furry bastard strikes again? Or is it someone else who is controlling him at this point?
Yeah, we got an ask from Shanto on Twitter about that. Shanto asks, did Eren make a fake Beast Titan with Warhammer powers, or did he control Zeke and puppet him to make the beast? I don't know. Do you guys have any theories on what exactly we saw on that page?
Last we saw, Zeke was pretty opposed to Eren's plan. So my guess is that nothing has happened to change that, but so he's being controlled, but I also don't really know, and I'm not really attached to any particular theory on that.
So Kingsgrave mentioned that Zeke was still throwing, and that was a Zeke ability, not a Beast Titan ability. So that would lend credence to the idea that it was Zeke being controlled and not just an empty shell. Because I think the second most popular theory is empty shell, that it's just literally like a fake Beast Titan.
I think in chapter 95, when Magath and some other military guy are going over like the Titan's powers in a Reiner flashback, I mean, it's one thing that's been talked about for whether the beast can take different animal shapes is they say it's the same as always, which I think includes the throwing. What they say afterwards is unique to Zeke is the stuff in his, like the miracle in his blood that allows him to control Titans a little bit. But I think most of the monkey forms, at least, are known for throwing.
And didn't Zeke teach Eren to play baseball as well?
I mean, it's such a
During their
big
time
part
in
of
Good
Marley.
point.
Zeke's.
That was Eren practicing, yeah.
So could have been Eren controlling Zeke somehow, or the Beast Titan. Not
There
Zeke.
is the theory that because Falco, let's see if I get this right, because Falco hinted that it might be Zeke's memory, that Zeke may have some sort of control still in some aspect, or at least enough to like call Falco, which I think, again, like that would be kind of a fun twist, but I'm kind of like done with projecting or hoping for twists. But if Zeke, I really hope that this isn't the end of Zeke, that he's not just a power up or, a puppet at this point. I don't think Isayama can never discuss Zeke again. Zeke has to come back, right?
Yeah, I think he'll have some sort of like actual analog and role in stopping Eren, with especially with Grisha telling him to please stop Eren, and then he was just out of the story after that, besides being used as a puppet. So I do think he might have sent Falco's memories, or he'll have something to help end Eren. I see why you guys brought me on this chapter with my puppet expertise on Zeke being a puppet. That said, I don't think he's actually in there. I lean towards it being Warhammer, just like Warhammer form. And the coloring team will have a real decision this month whether to color him like the Beast Titan or color him like Warhammer material.
Yeah, because he did look a different shade in this chapter compared to, the previous times we've seen the Beast. He looked a bit lighter this time around.
If that is Zeke, Kingsgrave had some really interesting thoughts on this, bringing out that Zeke himself destroyed that entire fleet of airships. Like, it kind of makes you believe that had Zeke, Zeke might have been the one responsible for all the expansion that Marley did there. That, you see the power of one Titan in this moment to take out an entire air fleet. And he was also talking about like, this is Marley. They should know this. And yet they were so unprepared. They literally have a weapon that throws things and takes down ships, and they lasted zero amount of time against Zeke. So maybe there was sort of some poetic justice there to the Beast Titan being the one to take them all down, because he's probably the one that helped them get the power in the first place.
I mean, it's been discussed that, Marley has been relying on the Titan powers for too long. So, of course, the Titan powers have helped them expand. And Fort Salta is still in Marley. So I would expect, to see like outdated military, vehicles there as well. The thing is, I'm wondering about is what is the rest of the world doing? What kind of equipment do they have that could far exceed the power of the Titans? because we have only seen like the United Army, but it's been mostly Marley, I think. Like the uniforms all look Marleyan.
Not the original. Again, Puppet can probably speak to this, but that looked like a global force.
I think Fort Salta is a Marleyan force.
Mm.
The global fleet, I think the Invasion Imperatus in the Return to
Oh, there.
Shiganshina
Yeah,
2
yeah.
was the United Front, and then the forces that Eren decimated in 130
Yeah.
when we first saw the rumbling arriving at the shore, that was a United Front that Willie Tiber helped bring together or whatever.
Yeah, and this one seems Marleyan, at least at Fort Salta. And are you really that surprised? I mean, these are the people that kept sending ship after ship after ship to Paradise, like one by one, and then like, oh, they're not coming back. Oh, let's send another ship.
Yeah, they would suck at battleship.
Did they send like 30 ships, like 30 before they gave up? I think, or some crazy number
I think
like
more
that.
than that, even, yeah.
See, this is like where I'm like, Isayama's just like, screw like world building and like logistics. Like
32 ships.
Yeah, I thought it was over 30.
Yeah, if this were real life, I feel like Marley would have been decimated long ago with their horrible military strategies.
Yeah, like you mentioned, Luna, they really had been relying on the Titans too long, and it was just before the festival, like a month before the festival, that they had that meeting about, we need to improve our forces and all that. That's when General Calvi mentioned, do we have any flying Titans? Because they knew their air forces were such utter crap.
He got his wish.
So, Puppet, you think that Beast Titan is an empty shell, which I kind of like that idea too. I like the idea of Levi slicing it open and it just like being the Pillsbury Doughboy or something, just like poof, gone. But you think it's finally that show of Warhammer powers. And Hamliet, you think that it's Zeke, but he's being controlled?
yes, I guess I'm not like, I don't really, a puppet is totally a possibility too, and I'm not really attached to either particular theory. I guess I don't think that Zeke is like in full control willingly doing this.
Yeah, I think we all agree on that, unless Luna is the outlier.
I think it's Zeke being controlled, but I'm willing to be wrong on this one.
To clarify my position on how exactly Eren formed it with the Warhammer, I don't think the Warhammer can always just do that. Like, I don't think the Lady Tiber could have just summoned, the other 8 Titans, basically formed versions of them. I think it's a very particular mix between the fact that Eren has the Warhammer and that he's currently attached to Zeke somehow. So it's kind of the Beast Titan being like forcibly summoned, but in the form of Warhammer. It's kind of confusing, and I doubt Isayama will explain it. But I think it's a mix of factors.
Seems plausible to me.
So let's head back to shore and discuss the speech. Was it a sergeant or a general? I'm not good with military hierarchy.
This was the part of the chapter you disliked the most.
Yes.
Yes.
I did. I don't, this for me was the worst part. Yeah, so the speech by the general, let's call him the general, speaking to, I'm presuming, Eren, taking blame for what's going on right now and, saying, if we survive this, I'll promise to do better. We cannot ever let something like this escalate to this point ever again. It's not necessarily a bad speech in and of itself. It's just coming from completely the wrong person, like someone on the opposite side who doesn't have much to gain when, and more importantly, it's just the wrong time. Like, this is not when you have a speech like that. This is like when everything is over and done with, and you kind of look at like what led up to this happening, what led up to the rumbling, and how can we prevent this from happening in the future. This is not something you yell mid-battle. And I kind of feel it was only done to kind of humanize Karina a bit, to have Karina react in some way. This speech didn't do anything for me at all. I'm sure, Isayama was trying to pull at some emotional strings, but it did the exact opposite. And Yeah, but I'm not the well. I do dislike this part of the chapter, but luckily we have some people here who don't and who might actually have liked this, and I'm very curious to hear how. So, Puppet, what did you think of the speech?
So I initially didn't like it very much. I had pretty similar thoughts to you on it. I think its role in the story is that it's setting up for some sort of peaceful ending where, like I said earlier, whoever remains alive in the world is going to come together and
Mm.
in peace for similar thoughts as this guy was saying. Uh, but yeah, I didn't like it at first at all. I thought it was kind of ham-fisted and didn't make sense in the context of the scene it was in. But the majority of the fandom has enjoyed it. Looking at the poll right now, 60% say it was a great speech for the continued themes of the series. 21% say they liked the message but felt the placement was unrealistic, and only 6.9% thought it was completely stupid. And even places like Titanfolk, which has a bit of a reputation on Reddit for being pro Jaegerist and like cringing at peace, some of the top comments on the release thread there are talking about how they got chills reading this speech and they love the ideas of it and how Isayama wrote it. And then for me personally, coming around to liking it, that's mainly from a thought I had about Kenny and his backstory with Uri. So the two main instances where we've seen the miracle of peace happen are when there's long exposure, like Niccolo and them were stuck on the island for 4 years. Were very racist and hated the Eldians at first, and then came around. And the other time is under threat of imminent death, which is what we see right here with this guy. And then calling back to Kenny, Uri, who knew about the whole outside world and talked about the miracle of peace between him and Kenny, which many fans extrapolate to be him talking about the hypothetical of a peace between Paradis and the rest of the world. Kenny was planning to kill Uri, but it's only because he was overwhelmed by a Titan power, was defeated, and thought certain death was at hand from, again, being overpowered, that he was able to come to the realization that they could be friends, and he was open to that. And so I think using that miracle of peace scenario here, just on a larger scale, is a little more plausible than I had thought before without that context.
What about you, Hamliet? Did you have any thoughts?
I think Puppet kind of summed it up perfectly, and I hadn't connected it to Uri and Kenny, but that really fits well. Yeah, I also initially was like, at first I thought it was like thematically relevant and good, but also perhaps like pretty ham-fisted. And I still think that that's a valid critique, but yeah, the connection between Kenny and Uri, like really, that helps a lot.
Yeah, I agree. It is a little ham-fisted still in giving the audience the message. So yeah, I definitely understand the complaints, and I share some of them.
And my issue with it was that I felt like it was the victims blaming themselves. We did this to us. Now has come the time to repay us for all the hate we've ever shown. We deserve this. If we survive, let's promise to do better. It's not the message that bothers me. There's been so much of everybody blaming themselves and taking responsibility for what's happened, which should be a good thing. I wonder that Eren's getting a
Yeah,
little bit of a pass here, and that really bothers
that's.
me.
I'm not surprised that Titan folk liked it because, yeah, the general is basically saying it's not his fault; it's all of our fault.
Right. This is our
So
doing.
it's like Eren did nothing wrong, huh?
I mean, for me, I thought it was psychologically realistic, which is something I think SNK has always done really, really well. In that, I mean, also, like, these are moments where literally the entire world is completely out of control, and the only thing that they can control is themselves and their own thoughts and their own beliefs in this moment. And so it makes sense to me that they're analyzing from a perspective of, okay, like, what have I done? And it's not necessarily to say that that's the like a healthy or whatever, or even just to bring psychology very much into this, but it's like it seems realistic to me.
Hmm.
And I think also the framing of like the last panel of the chapter, I think Cass makes it clear whose fault it is. So for like if this just occurred like on its own, I definitely can see it being like, oh, Eren gets a pass, but I just didn't see it that way at this point. But yeah, That's just my opinion.
I guess in support of you, when Puppet, Crunch, and Humble and I were talking as we were working on the poll questions this month, Humble used the illustration of like somebody's holding a gun to your head. How do you react? Basically you beg, you cry. Most people anyway. You don't sit there and start to bully that person or blame them, or you react with fear. And I think he felt like the general was kind of that sort of
Yeah,
reaction to it.
that's what I was hoping for at first, that it was him trying to appeal to Eren and saying, we get it, we were wrong, we will do better, so please stop. But at the same time, he's also attacking Eren, so you don't fight back and also, say you were wrong and it's all your fault at the same time, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I don't think. Oh, what were you saying, Luna?
yeah, no, so I was hoping for that to happen, that he was just like desperate and basically trying to make it stop. But I don't think that was the case, unfortunately. That being said, yeah, I have to disagree with Hamliet on this one. I think the psychological point was always something that Isayama did really well, but I feel like the last couple of chapters, he's been faltering a little bit on that perspective, and this was just one of them where it just didn't resonate with me at all.
I don't think that Eren and the world being at fault are mutually exclusive. Like them saying we're at fault doesn't mean that they're saying Eren did nothing wrong. I think it takes two to tango for this case. I mean, it does really come down to your thoughts on Eren, which obviously are very debatable since Isayama hasn't been 100% clear. You can interpret it as, oh, Eren was always going to attack because he didn't like the outside world or whatever he said in 131. My interpretation is that without the world antagonizing them, Eren wouldn't have attacked. But also, it was clearly a choice on his part. And we asked this on the poll. We said many characters have been shown taking on the blame. Does Isayama want the world to be at fault instead of Eren? And the large majority, at almost 70%, is he wants us to recognize both are at fault. But I will say 17% say it's the world's fault only, and 8% say it's Eren's fault only. So more are blaming the world than Eren, which I think could be a problem.
Okay, wait. What percentage think that Eren is kind of free of blame in this?
17%.
17. Wow. That's what I don't. Okay.
He had no choice.
I
Eren
know.
did nothing wrong.
I kind of and I think that's probably why I think if that element wasn't in our fandom, I'd probably care a little less about how clear or unclear the messaging is, but that bothers me a little. But I complained about this on my blog and I got a little pushback. A lot of people did not agree with me, but somebody, Old Summer Dream, wrote thoughts about it. And I just wanted to read something that she wrote, which I thought was a really good point. She says that it reminds her of John Milton's Paradise Lost. Milton claimed to write Paradise Lost to justify God's way to men, but instead he ended up portraying the devil a bit too charismatically. Sympathetically, fascinating and human, the devil became the star. And that's why people like to say that Milton was actually on the devil's side. And she feels like maybe in this case, Isayama has done the same thing. His intention was to condemn violence and the rumbling and to work towards a solution of love and peace, but he couldn't help but give his own devil a little bit too much charisma, humanity, sympathy. And, I just really like that comment.
I think I also kind of responded to this
You
on
did.
Tumblr. There's someone sending me a message that I didn't realize was connected to your post. But yeah, I don't think that that's necessarily a good. I think it's kind of a little bit of a false equivalence, because I guess when you read Paradise Lost, it's been a number of years since I've read it, but I mean, I would say 99% of people who read it come to the perspective that okay, you may not be intending to justify Satan, but Satan's the hero of this story. I mean, if we're looking at even if it's 17% that's supporting Eren, that's 83% that's not. And so I just don't necessarily think that
Yeah.
that's the case. I do think Isayama's been quite clear, and I think the final ending will have the final clear message about where Isayama stands on this. So it's hard to say right now. And then there's debates about to what extent you owe your readers proper framing when it's an ongoing series that's monthly, and there's that whole thing. But irrespective of that, I really do think that if people think that Eren has nothing to blame, that it's blatant misreading at this point. I don't think he can make it any clearer between him saying like, "Oh yeah, I'm not going to take away your freedom," but he literally locked his friends up. He's lied to them. He's lied to us multiple times, and we know now that he knew he was lying when he talked to Mikasa and told her that she was a slave. And like we know that he wasn't correct about Armin's feelings about Annie, and we know that he is doing this because he feels like he has no choice, and that is what he feels like, and he hates it, but he's still doing it. And I don't think that's making it clear that it's Eren's choice. And so I just don't see how people think that Eren is even the hero of the story when Eren himself has said that he's not right before the actual hero gets resurrected. Like, which is like a very common heroic trope with Armin. And I don't, I mean, we can debate whether how successful Armin has been in being portrayed as a hero. But I don't actually think Isayama has been very unclear. But I do think there's an aspect of like grayness to it, which I think is actually quite bold of Isayama. And I admire it because I think everyone wants to say like, oh, like these genocidal people, they're monsters and they have nothing to do with us. But that's the point, is that they do. Like we're all kind of like, there is an aspect of a monster, a possibility in most people. And there's good in monsters. And I don't think that we're supposed to be like, Eren was just like constantly evil and like that sort of thing. And I think it's the fact that we can relate to him is supposed to be disturbing. And it's not a common portrayal of genocidal characters in media at all. But I don't necessarily think that makes it a gray framing. I just think it's disturbing because it's supposed to disturb us. And it's supposed to make us question ourselves. Yeah, that's kind of where I stand on it, but I totally understand how people are seeing it in different ways. So, yeah.
I really agree with all of your thoughts. Like Eren's kind of like Thanos. Like he's clearly presented as the antagonist in the story, but he has a little bit of depth and reasoning you can understand. I think the main thing that makes it confusing to a lot of people is that Eren was the protagonist, and so like, wait, isn't he still the protagonist? And so any explanation of his motives, instead of being viewed as the antagonist, giving you an understanding into their thoughts instead of just being evil for evil's sake, people view it as, oh, okay, here's the reason Eren still is doing the right thing. And it's just people can't make that switch quite yet.
Yeah.
But other than that, I agree. Isayama's been really clear that the Alliance are the good guys we're following, hoping they win. You know, they're the hope of humanity. And whether you think Eren's evil or bad or not, from a narrative perspective, he's definitely the final antagonist and boss.
But wouldn't this be easier to argue if there had been any other solution offered that wasn't a farce, or any avenue to peace that hasn't been like, the Survey Corps has been portrayed as being so incompetent, the rest of the world as so evil. There's never been a reliable pathway to peace. And I think what bothers me most about this is that it makes the genocide look inevitable. And I just really resent that. Like I reject that a society so much like our own, that borrows so much from our own, that this situation was inevitable. I just wish Isayama had worked a little harder to make it clear that, here was a pathway to peace that was ignored. And I think that piece of the story is missing.
Well, that's like Hanji said, I just can't accept genocide, which is obviously a very fair point of view.
I'd like to hope so, yeah.
To your point of another path to peace being offered, or another solution in some way being offered that is plausible, maybe making the discussion better, I would disagree with that because it would pretty much ruin everything about Eren's motivation. If there was a clear alternative, then there would be no grayness to it, because then he'd clearly be ignoring that to do the genocide, and that would just really ruin it in my eyes. I mean, we can see that he wanted other solutions. He was yelling at Hanji, is there no solution? He waited around in Marley a little bit to see if that path to peace was possible. And, you could say he gave up too quickly, but I think Eren would have preferred an alternative if he thought it was possible in the
See,
slightest.
that's where I think I disagree with you. I think he made up his mind and actively did nothing to look for another solution or even prevented it. So I think that's probably where I'm disconnected from you on that thought. It's clear to me that he made up his mind when he kissed Historia's hand what he was going to do. He might have hated it, but he was already done.
Yeah, that's certainly possible. We won't know for sure until we get the final Eren answers, and even after then, I'm sure it'll be debated for a long, long time what exactly was going on in that boy's head.
Yeah, I kind of feel like that's a question that Isayama might just not answer.
Oh, that would be
about Eren, and I'm actually okay with that because I don't know. I just think it's an interesting question that maybe an answer would perhaps be too simple. I don't know if Eren himself knows. I guess I'm kind of like, maybe he did make up his mind, and at the same time, maybe he also tried to keep options open. Like, I don't know if it's something that can be simply answered. So, yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I just hope it's more than I want the world to myself. I don't want other people in it. I hope it's just more than that, at least.
I can agree with that 100%. That line really confused me and my thoughts on Eren.
Yeah, I kind of liked that idea because if we want to go back to Paradise Lost, it's basically the motivation of Satan. And it's like one of the oldest stories told. It's just the whole idea that I want the world centered around what I want, and I want other people, but I want them centered around like what I believe they should do. And the irony of that is that it's completely against the idea of personal freedom.
I think you're one of those people that you've had quite a journey with the story as far as Aaron, I think. Like you actually, you were one of those people that loved him, loved his relationship with his friends, saw him as the hero, saw warning signs, but kind of believed the best in him. Is that accurate?
Kind of. I think reading the story from the beginning, when I started reading it, my sister was like, "Oh, she thought my favorite character was going to be Armin, and it was eventually, but at first it was Eren." And he's still like one of my very favorites. In fact, I think Eren is currently my favorite. I guess I always thought that he always had like these dark sides, but I thought he was going to change, and I thought he was going to like sacrifice his life for I never thought he was getting out of the story alive. Like, and now I'm like looking back at it, I'm like, nope. I think he just dug deeper and refused to, like, I think I said this like last chapter, but it felt like instead of growing, he just dug his feet in and refused to grow at all. And that's a very interesting character to me because it's not a common portrayal of characters, and especially not a protagonist.
Yeah.
Because Eren is still kind of like the main character, but he's the antagonist now. And so again, I think this is kind of like it's a unique story, and it's a unique portrayal of a main character, which makes me appreciate him as a character a whole lot more. But he's also, like Puppet was saying, clearly the final antagonist. And I wouldn't want him to survive the story.
I find it hard because we are missing so many of like Aaron's thoughts to really, make him. Yeah, so we know he made the switch, and he dug his heels in and was like, "This is the path I'm on," and instead of growing, as you put it, but we don't really know, what's going through his head. And that panel of him like looking out of the window with that forlorn look up on his face, thinking of his friends. I'm like, there's part of him that we know that he cares about his friends, but then at the other time he's also okay with like harming them or killing them, as it seems in this chapter. So there's this weird dichotomy going on that I don't really understand right now with Eren. Like, I don't really understand what his motivations are, what his feelings towards his friends are. Like, is he doing this because he feels like Paradise's safety is more important than anything else? Is his feeling of freedom more important? What is he willing to sacrifice to reach his goal? There's too many mysteries revolving Eren at this point for me to really feel like he's still a relatable character in any way, shape, or form at this point. And maybe he shouldn't be, because you don't want to feel like you're relatable. You can relate to someone who commits mass genocide, but I don't know. And that's also the other thing. Like, I don't know if it's mainly about there being another solution. Maybe there was no solution to end this conflict peacefully, and then this is just an end result of that. So, like, in a way, it's like tabula rasa. Let's start over with a blank slate and let's try to do better next time.
I just hate that. I think I'm too optimistic in general to accept that this was the eventuality of this world and there was no way around it.
I guess like what I think about that is just I'm a pacifist, but I don't think like but Attack on Titan is not it's not quite there, but it's certainly not like yay violence. Violence is great. Um but I think it is trying to explore like what do you do when there is no such thing as a way forward where no one gets hurt. Like ideally there would be a solution where they could talk things out and where no one got hurt, and there really isn't one. Like there isn't one, but that doesn't necessarily mean that genocide was the only answer. And I do think Isayama could have put a little bit more emphasis on this, but at the same time I also kind of see what Puppet was saying about how if he did that then that would make Eren less understandable. But I think that it is like asking like the impossible questions, like what do you do in a world that is so by its nature violent, and how do you stop that when that's already so rampant and just there isn't a great answer.
Yeah. I mean, I can see that too. Yeah.
Well, on that uplifting note, let's take a short break. And when we come back, we'll talk about the parents from Liberio and especially Karina. Because fuck her. Really. Fuck her.
We'll be right back. Welcome back to Group Therapy for Momtaku. Joined again by Hamliet and Puppet helping me out with that. And as promised, it's time to discuss another reason why I was depressed this chapter, Karina Braun. Luna, you're with me on this. I think the only person I know that like feels about Karina like I do is you.
Karina. I love that Andrew keeps calling her Katrina because
She's not worth remembering her name.
I mean, well, to me, I was like just thinking of Hurricane Katrina because like she would be okay with that if it meant that like she could be an honorary Marleyan.
Right. If it blew down all the homes around her, but kept her home standing and gave her a better view of the,
Yeah. No, that's yeah, it's kind of also in reference of the, the speech kind of making her see the error of her ways all of a sudden, like, oh no, I treated him so badly. And
do you buy it? Do you think that she's actually reformed?
I think her feelings are genuine in this moment. Like she feels bad, but it's also like she's finally realizing what a crap person she is. So of course that would make her sad. I'm not surprised at that, but do I expect any change from her going forward? Not really. Yeah, and the compassion people are having for her this chapter, like, okay, from her brother and sister-in-law, I can kind of get it, but like Papa Leonard was really disappointing to me this chapter. Where was that badass motherfucker from last chapter? Okay. Who do I pass the shit on Karina baton to? Because
I'll take it. I hate her. No. She's by far like my least favorite parent in this series, and that's saying a lot. But I think we're supposed to see it as genuine, whether or not that changes how I feel about her, it doesn't. But I think emotionally, sure, within the story, I really as I said, I want Reiner to save her, and then I want him to ditch her. Like, I want him to save her and be like, "Thank you, now goodbye."
Thank you. Next.
Exactly. I don't know.
the bulk of the Reiner fan fiction that I read, like, read it for people that, like, hate on Karina. Like, I love seeing Reiner break free from his abusive mother. Like, it's so gratifying
I
in
mean,
the
there's
fan
like
fiction world.
a thing where, like, I mean, it is like, I guess, like, Mr. Leonhardt has his own issues, but like, I wouldn't mind seeing, like, I mean, I'm not necessarily certain that they're all going to survive, but like, I wouldn't mind seeing him and Annie reconcile. And I didn't mind seeing like Grisha and Zeke kind of come to that understanding. But for Karina and Reiner, I just don't want it. We might get it, but I don't want it.
We go full Jon Snow. I didn't want it. But I feel exactly the same way as you do on that.
Yeah.
I think LSJ, I forget the exact description, but it was like something like Corinna struck her as like a religious zealot combined with a pageant mom, like a beauty pageant mom.
Oh
And
my
I thought
God.
that was actually like, okay, I see it. Like
Yeah.
that's Corinna. Like her kid is a performance piece and not necessarily, but she's so self-righteous in how she feels about it. Um Puppet, do you want to save this conversation or do you want to join the kicking?
I'm a little bit more positive on it.
Good.
This is something that's going to be quite shocking, but I actually used to like Karina, not for actually reasons of liking her. I think it was just recency bias because I caught up to the story right before the Marley arc started, and so most of the Paradis characters weren't really relevant. It was mainly like, ooh, what are this group of characters going to do? And she was just introduced then, so she was on my mind more often. I actually found an old character ranking that I think Raikou put out, and I have Karina ranked at 29 back when I took this, or again during the Marley arc, which is above Hannes, Connie, Colt, Petra, Mike,
Ooh.
and Marlo, among others, which I definitely would change now to debrief all those people. But this goes to show I have had mixed thoughts on her, more so story importance than like ever liking her as a person. It's just I thought she had an interesting role in the story. Which back during the festival, I thought she'd have a moment after Eren's attack, or during the attack. I thought she might die, mirroring how Reiner caused Eren's mom to die if Eren causes Karina to die. But she hasn't really gotten anything since before the festival, and so I'd kind of forgotten about her. And it was nice to see her back again, because, like I said, I had thoughts on what she could do for the story, and Isayama never really delivered on those yet. And I think most people should have the chance at redemption. Well, obviously, she did horrible things and doesn't negate that. If you can't change the past, it's better to at least regret it than just go on thinking you were right. And so, while it's still not good, it's better than she was 5 minutes ago, which
I mean, yeah, I agree. I agree with that, and that's a good point.
So I get very few things right in this story. Not, I take my victories where I can. And this actually was good for me because when Corinna was first revealed, I equated her to the kind of parent who hates their ex more than they love their kid, the kind that like weaponizes their child, in this case, very literally, to kind of get back at the lover that jilted them. Like she just kind of struck me as that sort of petty person who just really prioritizes himself. So this chapter, when she said, I used him for revenge, played directly back into what Reiner's dad said in chapter. Okay, Puppet, was it 96? 95?
95.
95, when Reiner's father said that she was using him for revenge. So that felt really good for me that, maybe I read that one correctly, that was the situation. Whereas other people at the time viewed her as someone who just genuinely drank the Marley Kool-Aid and was a victim. And, to me, there was no victim here. This was a selfish woman doing selfish things. So of course, we had to include that on the chapter poll because yay. And I had to include that screenshot because yay. And we did ask, what did Karina mean when she said that she used Reiner as a tool of revenge? And we listed both of those options that, he was a tool for Marley and also a tool for Karina to get revenge on her ex. And at this point, 50% think that both is good. And I agree.
Yeah.
Especially since in that panel she ripped off her armband, which I thought was an interesting detail. So it's kind of like I do think both. I think that
I missed that she did that. That's really interesting.
Yeah, she rips off her armband, and I think now you can double check, but it looked
Yeah,
to
she
me
takes
like
it
we
off.
don't
Yeah.
okay, we didn't see her taking it off, but we see it on the ground in front of her and she's looking at it. So to me, it's like, okay, she did drink the Kool-Aid. She did think that Marley was the latest, greatest thing in the world, but also definitely used him to try to get back at Mr. whatever Reiner's dad's name is. So yay, this is happy, but we take our happiness where we can. But I Puppet, you touched me with your words. I also believe that I mean, I'm glad she's better than she was 5 minutes ago, really. Reiner deserves it.
And I think also like her changing her mind is like an optimistic or like a hopeful like indication for the future of the series as well. Like even if someone like as who has been negatively as negatively framed as Karina has can change, even if it's like in a dire situation, then I don't know. Like I think it's optimistic for the ending. So
I would agree with you.
I want some sort of like karma for her. Like Reiner finally
too.
gets to be like, the beacon of hope and, gets everything, is everything that she wanted him to be, but then she's not around to reap any benefits anymore or whatever the situation is at the end. So,
Hellos, baby.
yes.
It was. I know this is later in our outline, but seeing Reiner coming in like that and Corinna's I enjoyed the art. I enjoyed I I think one of my favorite panels in this chapter was the one of Mr. Leonhardt and Corinna standing together, with their backs turned to the audience, to the reader, and being like, I'm sure they're okay. I thought that was a very sweet moment. I wish it wasn't Corinna in that moment, but a very sweet one. So, and I appreciated her and everyone's, eyes lighting up as Reiner swooped in. Yay for good art. Lots of good art.
Yeah, and she was kind of kind to him, like, of course, Papa Leonard said they won't die before their parents, and Karina says, yes, I'm sure they're alive, which is a far cry from what she said at the festival. From like, my son is the hero, and your kids are all dead on Paradise.
Well, she made that sound like such an honor that her kids are dead on Paradise. Like, she was very smug about it, but, what an honor that they served their country to death. So, yeah,
Which is also like a kind of a jab at them, like, see, my kid is the perfect one. The one who
Mhm.
gets things done and doesn't die like an idiot among those devils.
Oh, well.
So, which is, yeah, so they were both very kind to each other this chapter, which surprised me. And maybe it's also knowing that they're probably gonna die. Maybe that's also where they're being kind to each other. Maybe if that feeling of death wasn't so imminent, then maybe Papa Leonard would have told her to get a grip and be like, yeah, you reap what you sow, bitch.
You have very high hopes for Mr. Leonhardt.
I had this chapter was like, nope. Shitting on all my hopes and dreams.
A quick note on Isayama's naming schemes. For a lot of the parents, he just calls them Mr. and Mrs., and that's like all there is to it. Like Mr. Leonhardt's a big character. That's still all we have him known as.
Mm.
Sasha's mom, we have her name as Lisa. Isayama told us that, but who cares about Lisa? Mr. Bros, the actual character, doesn't have a name. Like, I don't know why he refuses to give us so many names.
Yeah, that's true. And, we have Mr. Finger. Is Mr. Finger here or yeah, he is. Okay. I just love saying that.
Oh, peak finger, for crying out loud.
Okay, but who isn't here are Zeke's grandparents,
No.
which, what? I wonder what's up with that.
We know that Grandpa's in the mental hospital, so that might be why he's separate at least.
And that was like before Eren, their other grandson, destroyed Liberia.
Yeah. Oh, I
And
can
Zeke
only
betrayed
imagine
them.
the scream he had when he got that version. My name's Eren Yeager. I'm gonna destroy the world.
Yeah. And they also figured out that Zeke was a traitor after that. So I'm like, ooh, either they were already off then or they left them there in some sort of like prison or whatever.
I'm just curious, do you guys think, they'll be back in the story, Zeke's grandparents, or do you think they're probably dead?
They're definitely dead.
I mean, like, again, like, logically, they're probably dead, but it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, I honestly thought Mr. Leonhardt was dead for a while, and, like, Karina, but it wouldn't surprise me if they came back. I feel like it could go either way.
I briefly thought they were going to be important, like between chapters 132 and 133, when we knew the boat people were going off separately and we hadn't seen the survivors on the train yet. Everyone assumed that the Librerio people survived and that they'd run into our main group or at least something important to the plot at some point. And I did assume that the Jaegers would be there. And I had a crack theory that maybe that's how Zeke's important, is because he's related to them by blood. He can talk to them through paths easier or something, and they were going to like relate his plan. But obviously, nothing like that worked out, and they just aren't here.
Mm.
Do you think that that's a shame that, that threat was kind of dropped?
Probably, like I mentioned earlier, I like when Isayama brings back minor characters,
Hmm.
but I don't think they need to be here necessarily.
Yeah, I think I agree.
I mean, I feel like a reunion is coming and, Zeke and Eren's grandparents wouldn't have anyone to reunite with. Not in the way they want, at least.
Some people have leveled criticism that they all magically survived and made it here, but so now we have evidence. At least 2 of them are dead.
Probably.
Grandma, Grandpa Yeager. So there we go. Not everybody lived.
I mean, I guess it's like with that criticism, I'm like, yeah, but also, again, this is one of those things where it's like Isayama, like, it's realistic in a lot of ways, but it's also a story. So, of course, the
Yeah.
characters who are connected to our characters are going to be like the masses who survive.
Yeah, like Eren found them through paths and spared them, He trampled all of Marley except for his grandparents.
I do think that Zeke loved them.
Yeah. Well, they basically raised him.
Maybe they will matter, or maybe, yeah, who knows? If Zeke is still alive, maybe they still have some relevance.
We'll see. There's a lot of
Yeah.
what ifs, and well, you said
Mm.
Yama hasn't done that yet. Like, we only have probably 4 chapters left. Like, where is he
Oh
gonna
my
fit all that
gosh.
in?
I feel like he's used the double page spreads, the gorgeous, gorgeous art. He wanted this to end at that moment of this volume needed to end at the Avengers coming to save the day, Reiner doing his HELOS thing, and then boom,
Yes.
end of volume, and I feel like a lot of the I I think it was Nitaku that explained it to me, like, how does it feel like it's dragging, but also rushing? And
Mm.
it's like
Yeah.
these double page spreads are a mechanism of, like, dragging. They're interesting, they're beautiful, they add something to the story, but they really do kind of feel like they make the chapter feel very short.
It reminds me of like in the chat in the 90s, like during the Marley arc, where some chapters just seemed like they were going over the same information over and over again.
Oh, yeah, don't
And
don't get me started.
it was always emotional, and it was always like, okay, yeah, but also we know this, like, and it just like it was clearly so Isayama could get to chapter 100 and have it be like that moment.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's happening again.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, that's the downside of writing a monthly manga, I guess.
exactly. Yeah.
You need to have a cliffhanger every time.
So, the Alliance arrives to save the day. And Luna, you have in our document, Reiner Helos, yes, baby, yes.
Yes. That was my absolute favorite panel when he transformed and you just see that big ball of light in the distance. I'm like, yes. When all hope is lost, pray to
I
Reiner.
have good news for you.
What?
I have good news for you. So, in the poll, you know how
Yes.
people, well, you've noticed this because you've been on the poll a long time too. People are very resistant to accepting that Reiner, is going to be a good thing. So, we asked in the poll, was this the start of Reiner's Helos moment? And the good news for you is that only 27.9% believe that he's not in any way Helos. So we still have about 30% of the fandom that do not think that Reiner is going to fit that role of Helos in any way. But that also means that 72.1% do think that Reiner's going to fill that role, whether they like it or not.
I mean, for me, he already has this chapter, regardless of what if he's going to, stop Eren or Zeke, he's giving people hope. So
Yeah.
I love that moment.
Did you want to talk about it a little bit?
I'm scrolling through the pages right now again.
Okay, while Luna's distracted looking at Reiner, Helos, yes, baby, yes. It was a good moment.
It was.
On Yunkapan was a good moment, and it felt good, man. Feels good, man. So we can talk about all, like, the nice, good things that happened in this chapter, or we can switch over to, is Eren really A-okay with killing his friends? And I think that that's another poll topic that, it's been kind of funny to watch people make that shift to whether he is or he isn't.
Yeah, I feel like I would say like I don't think he's like A-okay with it. I don't think he wants to kill them, but I think he may be willing to. And whether he is or isn't willing to, I don't think it matters because I definitely think at least one of his friends is going to die fighting him, probably more. So, like basically Hanji's already died because of him. Like,
Mm.
and he may not know that yet, or he may, who knows? The paths, I don't know how they work. I certainly think he locked them up because he didn't want them to get hurt. I think he knows that they're coming for him. And I think he may be hoping it's over before they get to fight, but I think we'll find out what happens. I think it's kind of pushing Eren towards that cliff where it's going to be like, what are you going to do?
Mm.
Anyways, this is my way of saying goodbye, Connie.
I was waiting for that. I was like, when you said at least one of his friends is gonna die, I'm like, it's Connie, right? It's gonna be Connie.
He's the only one without an arc. Like,
Oh. I hope they bury him next to Sasha at least.
me too. I've always been like either Sasha and Connie are both going to survive or they're both going to die. So like as soon as Sasha went, I was like, goodbye, Connie.
Oh. A puppet? What do you think?
Yeah, I really like the part where the Alliance flew in on the plane, because, I mean, we've been talking about how depressing the chapter was in a lot of respects. I mean, it's called In the Depths of Despair. So after, all this hopelessness, that full-page spread where the kid looks up and is like a plane, bird or plane or...
Superman!
And, yeah.
Reiner!
Although in the official translation, the kid automatically comes up with the title Flying Boat, which is
Yeah.
what everyone else called it because they'd never seen a plane before. It's like when everyone just came together on the name Beast Titan separately.
Hmm.
But the scene itself was awesome. It really showed how the Alliance is the hope of humanity, and then Reiner in particular, really taking on that role of Helos, jumping out of the plane and being the hope of humanity.
Yeah.
Particularly how Isayama zoomed in on Karina, noticing Reiner doing that,
Hmm.
which back when Reiner was leaving for the mission on Paradise, he was talking about how he wanted to be a hero to the world and for his mom, which, I mean, probably not a great goal since his mom sucks, but I think it's calling back to that, which is trying to remind us of his role as the hero, or also known as Helos.
I mean, this is just, I love the panels, I love the art, I love, the armored titan coming out of that, cloud of smoke, lunging at the beast titan. I love the final panel where he's just like, holding the beast titan down by, his neck. Oh, such a good panel.
Imagine it animated. I
Oh
mean,
gosh.
I don't remember who it was, that this is a chapter meant for animation, and I
Yeah.
agree.
I think everyone is like, oh my god, it's gonna be so crazy animated.
This might be a controversial opinion, but I actually think this wasn't the start of Reiner's Helos moment. I think this was it, and now it's done, and now he's not going to do a whole lot. I mean, 'cause,
In typical
I'm not-
Isayama
yeah.
fashion, he's gonna take a nap now.
yeah, exactly. Like I mentioned, he came in as the hope of humanity. His mom saw him be the hero, which was a big build-up, and then also the statue of Helos had him like over the devil, like with a spear through it. And while a lot of people have interpreted that as Reiner being the one to kill Eren, and that's certainly possible. If he's not the one to kill Eren, which is how I'm leaning right now, I think it'll be most likely Mikasa.
Yeah.
Then Reiner doesn't really have another specific Helos moment after this in my mind, and this almost is that pose with him down with his hand on the beast's throat. I think it covers enough of it checks enough of the boxes for this just to be the moment in and of itself.
I agree. I mean, it's not like I don't think Reiner will. It's not like I'm saying that I think Reiner will die, because I actually lean towards him not dying. And I think he might play more of a role in the battle. But I think that this is meant to be like the crowning pinnacle of his arc. And I think that with only 4 chapters left, the other characters need the focus a little bit more, because they haven't reached moments like that.
Yeah, I agree. And there's not a whole lot of things left to do in the fight. I mean, it's pretty much find, if Zeke's not in the nape, find where Zeke is and then just eliminate him, and then just pull Eren out and deal with him. And maybe a few Colossals will get in the way. You have to fight those off. But there's not really any big flashpoint objectives that could be a big moment, in my opinion, other than Zeke and Eren.
I do think this is going to paths next, or soon. A lot of this is going to get resolved in paths,
Probably.
but it feels like that's a very convenient place to settle some of this stuff without marching Titans stomping more civilians.
Yeah.
And if it does go there, that's Armin's moment to shine.
I feel like that'll be once they get to Eren, like maybe next chapter.
Yeah.
Not to get ahead of myself for next chapter predictions, but I think that'll focus on them ending Zeke, however that goes down, and then when they actually try to get Eren and pull him out of the nape is when Eren will bring him to pass, and they'll have like a final conversation. We'll get Eren in full flashbacks, and then it'll end after that.
That's my prediction as well.
I wonder if, this thing doesn't even have a nape, really, right?
It has like a cord coming out of its nape, so I mean, it's possible Zeke's right there, but I think it's more likely the cord goes back and like connects to Zeke himself.
Oh, you mean from the Beast Titan? I thought you meant
Yeah.
for Eren's nape.
Oh yeah, I was talking about the Beast Titan. Eren's Titan
Okay.
doesn't have a particular nape. They'd have to play where in the world is Eren Yeager on his Titan.
Do you guys think that the step 1 is like severing the connection between Zeke and Eren to stop
Yeah.
Eren? Or will it not make a difference at all?
I think it is important also if Historia is going to have any relevance. Yeah, I think it's important and probably will be the first step, but I also don't know how much time we'll actually spend trying to figure out a way to do that. Like, I think they might just be like, push a button and be like, that was easy again. So.
Okay, what if they indeed do that, and then the Colossals, they keep on going because now there's no one to control them?
That's pretty close to what I'm thinking. I agree with that.
Yeah, and then maybe they can feed Eren to Historia.
Nah. I don't think
or have
happen.
Eren hold hands with Historia and feed her, I don't know, another Titan so that she can stop the rumbling.
I mean, I think Historia might be able to stop the rumbling without being a Titan.
That's my hope.
Ooh.
I think she needs
Wrong manga.
There's
No.
I think there's some Titan, like there's some, like I don't really know how the paths work, and honestly, I don't really care.
Yeah, if she is pregnant with a baby Titan.
Well, exactly.
Like one of the
and like I also think they have to get rid of the Titan curse somehow through some like paths magic, and I assume that that's going to happen somehow.
That's what I always thought would happen, but now I'm not so sure anymore.
Historia's going to eat her baby and gain the Titan powers.
I had a thought recently on how they could. I had a thought on how they could remove the Titan curse without just it being Eren saying no more Titan curse. I mean, they assume that Eren could remove or give them the ability to transform into their Titans. That seems to be assumed in the story.
Mm-hmm.
So, whether or not aliens can turn into Titans hasn't really been discussed, but the Titan shifters themselves has. And we know, I'm pretty sure the only way to turn an alien into a Titan is to inject it with Titan spinal fluid. Well, if Eren, like as his dying thing, takes away the ability to shift into Titans from them, or takes away that it'll go to an alien baby, so when they die, it's done, or something like that. If all the Titan shifters die out, then there'd be no way to make new Titans. The only mindless Titan left would be Connie's mom. So if they somehow deal with that, then Titans would be essentially over, even if the potential for them would still technically be there.
I do think that the OG Emir and Historia, I hate to have any hope at this point, but I still hope that they meet and have a conversation.
Same.
It just seems like it would fit. I've said a lot of things I think would fit that haven't fit, but let me hold on to that one.
It's kind of the only way I can see Historia's situation being even slightly redeemed, and I don't even think it would like make it worth it, but I think it would make it
Better?
yeah.
My
Yeah.
best theory on Historia was that, which I'm not sure if it's the case now, because it seems that Falco and them are going to fly to the battle. But if they were to fly to Paradis, then through Falco, having the memories of previous Jaw Titans and apparently special like ability to get memories from Titans or whatever we've seen from Falco, Historia could somehow get Ymir's memories or speak with Ymir in some way through Falco, and then that would be able to give her the will to maybe perhaps eat Annie, and then combined with the female Titan scream and her having royal blood, she could stop the Titans.
No. Nothing's allowed to happen to Annie. Like,
But that would be good for Annie's character arc, since her whole
no.
thing is getting over being selfish. Her only thing is caring about reuniting with her dad. If she gives up on that and decides to die, that would be.
She's already given up on it by joining the fight, though.
I guess.
Like,
Yeah, she'd have
just
to
like I
find
was
out he's
nervous when it
alive
looked like
and
she
then
was
give
gonna
up on
like
it.
bow out, but now that she's back in it, I'm like, oh, okay, we're fine.
Yeah, now that they seem to not be going to Paradis, I don't know how Historia can have any relevance to anything, since, like you guys were saying, it's pretty much would just be through like a conversation impasse, which it'd have to be a pretty good conversation to change the current situation.
I mean, Historia's will to live, was going to be no matter who they are, no matter where, anyone who's crying or thinks they're unneeded, I'll tell them that's not the case. And if that's not OG Ymir and Zeke, both of them, I don't know who is.
Let's hope. I hope you're right on this one.
So the chapter ends with Armin making a 112 reference, I think. I think most people have agreed with that. Eren, I'm asking you one more question you're not going to like. What about you is free? And can you answer me once we drag you out of there? Big words. What do you guys, any thoughts on that? I mean,
I think it's the question is the one we're supposed to be like contemplating in terms of the themes. If this is true freedom, if what Eren is right now is truly free, which I have seen some people make arguments for, is it really free? And like, is it worth it to be able to can you be free with and still have relationships at the same time? Like, like if Eren is truly free, but he's willing to sacrifice even his friends or whatever, like, is that real freedom? Or is it just him being enslaved to an ideal of freedom? But I think there's not an easy answer. But I do think that Isayama is pretty clearly like frowning on Eren's idea of freedom.
Yeah, I agree with that. Freedom in its truest sense, everyone's freedom would contradict. Someone's freedom to steal from you contradicts with your freedom to hold to your own possessions, and it just goes around like that. So, I mean, Eren's like ideals of freedom contradict a little bit, as well as like lead to the cycle of violence that Isayama's been talking about.
I'm excited to see it. Like, I think we asked in the poll, what is Armin suggesting here? Does this mean that he's not done talking yet? Is this him posturing, basically, I'm going to kill you and then you're going to get your last words? I mean, I'm excited to find out what this is. I kind of agree with you, Hamliet. You'd mentioned before that, Armin was framed to be the hero back in chapter 84, and we haven't actually seen that yet. And I would like to see it. I would like to think
Yeah.
that Armin's survival mattered. So,
Yeah, so it cost you a little bit of something.
right.
Erwin didn't die for nothing.
Not that Armin's only importance is in his Titan, but we haven't seen him transform since the battle in Liberia, besides the flashback. So I hope he transforms one more time before the end of the manga, or that's a little bit disappointing.
Well, okay, so that takes me to a question we got from John Zabier from Twitter. And he wrote, we see that conventional bombs don't hurt Eren. So do you think someone is going to sacrifice inside of Eren's mouth with explosives, kind of like they did with Rod Reed, maybe peek and blow him up? But the next part was, if Eren wants to drag him out, he can't do that with his colossal nuke. That would be mortal for Eren. So when I read that, because I kind of thought I would really like to see Armin's Titan again. We've only seen it once and once in flashback. I'd like to see Armin do something like that. But I think that that's a fair him transforming creates, a lot of damage, secondary damage, and he really can't, not with that huge crowd standing so close. So, I don't know, maybe we're never gonna get to see Armin's Titan form again. Maybe he stays human through this.
What if he like goes around and like takes out all the like colossal titans by
Yeah.
standing near them because they could absorb the energy. I don't know, but like
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
plot things are not my plot is not my strength. I'm just basically like whatever. Like so.
I have some predictions on how the battle might go from here on out. I mean, they'll probably be wrong because it's Isayama and predictions are always wrong. But one of the main things leading my predictions for the battle is Peak and those bombs, like was mentioned in the tweet. I mean, she was able to transform midair and hold the bombs in her mouth, which I initially found very unrealistic. But if you think about Titan transformations, the flesh just kind of forms around them, which you could form around the bombs as well. Only the colossal seems to like be a real like explosion. But I think it'd be kind of ridiculous for her to carry the bombs around in her mouth for like a whole chapter. That would just look kind of funny. And it'd be unrealistic that they haven't exploded by then, even. So I think Peak's gonna explode next chapter and die. We have some build up for her from chapter 132 saying she's going to avenge her fallen warriors and things like that. People have been thinking she might die for a while. So I do think that's going to come next chapter. And since I don't think Eren's dying next chapter, that leads me to believe that she's going to use those to blow up Zeke. And obviously Levi's main plotline in the story right now is Zeke, and so it's possible he'll definitely help, I would think, but I'm not sure. He may or may not die from that as well. And but Falco and them we think are going to show up in the battle, and it'd be weird. It wouldn't be really important for them to show up if everyone's already winning. Like, yeah, we killed Zeke, that's not the rumbling. Like, so it has to go wrong after that. Like, people have theorized the Colossals will start walking on their own or whatever. And then we have this huge moment of despair, and then a Falco shows up. Armin's Colossal could be helpful in holding the Colossals back a little bit before that happens. Like, if he finds a safe place to transform, he could stretch out his arms and try and play like Red Robin with him or whatever. But
yeah, we in the poll we had originally like who's going next, Peak with the bombs or Anya and Kapan with the plane. One of them's going out in a suit. Maybe both of them are going to go out in like some sort of a grandiose kamikaze
I still have
effort.
some hope for Anya Kapan. I'm just
I
Me
know.
too.
for the love of God,
I feel
Isayama.
like let's see. On Yankopon is at 60.4% of like people who think he's going to die, and Peak is only at 50.1%.
Oh wow.
So the main people on the with the dead flags, according to the fandom are Zeke with 77.5% before the series ends. Let's see, and then on Yankopon 60.4, and with only a 0.2% difference, Connie at 60.2. And let's see, and then in Levi with 58.2, and then Eren with 54.1. And least likely to die is Gabby with only 11.6% of the votes.
Gabby gang, Gabby gang,
Gabby gang.
what can Gabby even do at this point? Like, I assume she'll fly in with Falco and Annie, and they can both do stuff. But Gabby's had enough good snipes, and she's definitely not going to be the one to kill Eren. So I don't.
Well, she kind of already did once. So.
Yeah, she's had her moment of revenge on Eren. There's enough other candidates in line to, talk to Eren.
I'm kind of with you guys. Like Anya and Kapan, I do think. I mean, Editor Kuhn kept Sasha alive for like what 40, 60 chapters.
Yeah.
69 chapters, I believe. Haha, funny number. But
There we go. Surely John Boyega can keep Anya and Kapan alive to the end of the series, right?
Yeah. So do you guys like so it's funny because like I always joke about like the death flags with like A Spoon of Sugar's blog on Tumblr, because she's like called almost every single death in the series right before it happens.
Ooh.
Like right down to like Hanji. She was like the chapter before Hanji died, she was like, oh, Hanji's going to die. Like Sasha and everything else. So I'm just kind of like, when I'm nervous about a character, I'm like, are they gonna die?
it's like those articles you see online. He predicted Trump winning last time. What is he saying this time?
So who is Spoon calling to be dead next? I have to check. I do follow them.
I don't think you're gonna like the answer, but she's
Oh
nervous.
no.
She's not certain, but she's nervous about Levi.
I've always felt like Levi's gonna die, and I'm
Yeah,
not
I
even
have
sad about that,
too
but I thought
until like recently, but usually once I get hope for a character, it means they're about to die, so
yeah. I just think Levi, if he dies, I mean, he does Isayama gives characters a good send-off. They've all had good
that's true.
send-offs. Levi needs a good send-off, and, like, that I feel like we would need at least if Levi's gonna die, we need at least half a chapter. The chapter needs to be focused on him. It needs to, needs to make us cry, and I don't like, there's okay, am I wrong in that Levi would need Hanji got half a chapter. Would
Yeah.
Levi get half a chapter?
Yeah, I think it definitely would get that big a focus, especially if he wants to kind of drag it out, like maybe have next chapter end with despair of it's still going on, and then next chapter end with the cliffhanger of Falco. That's a good way to drag it out, is have a big like emotional focus on something like that. And
Mm,
like I theorize Levi could potentially die with Peak in an explosion that kills Zeke, and their motivations and thoughts could kind of they're a little bit congruent because Peak's talking about avenging our fallen warriors, and Levi could think back to Erwin's speech about we give all of our fallen soldiers meaning by continuing to fight ourselves and through our deaths, and so those two thoughts kind of fit a little bit, so them dying together would fit. And obviously that's very emotional for Levi to die thinking about that, and also that he's finally fulfilled his promise, and that he's brought meaning to all these deaths by helping to end this fight.
that's
And
good.
Yeah.
also for Peak, particular helping kill Zeke, they've had the most connection between any warriors. That's exactly right. That's between those two. So I think Peak has some particular beef with Zeke.
Oh
Also, I've
yeah.
said Peak and Zeke so much, I just feel like someone should write a poem
Peak
about
seek,
that.
peak seek,
The
seek
slant
peak.
rhyme.
Plus, like, Peak is kind of, I don't know, she's been kind of more of a mentor figure than any of the other characters to Gabby and Falco, and Levi as a mentor, and just mentors in general in literature, but especially in SNK, do not fare well. They just don't.
Falco shows up. What happened to Miss Peak?
Exactly.
Let's not talk about that, Falco. She went to the farm, Falco.
That's what they need to do. Poor Falco. Oh, I hate this series so much.
Is it bad that I kind of want Levi to live? Like,
Yes.
No.
even
Yes.
if, okay, well, listen, hear me out for the reason first before you say no.
Because he gets to go to Erwin Heaven. So, with Hanji in
Oh.
Erwin Heaven.
No, he is going to live, and I hope he is not the one to kill Zeke, and it will just be, he will feel so empty and he has nothing left, and it will be so. It
No.
would be no, he has to die, like, because I don't see him living as a good thing, because he has really nothing left in this world.
Well, I do think the best thing for him, for the story to go at this point, is for him to make a sacrifice, and I do think that's what's going to happen. There are a few small problems with it. One being he hasn't really done anything in the story since he survived the explosion with Zeke. I mean, he was out of the story, then he came back and sat on the sidelines making like grunts like once a chapter, and then he said goodbye to Hanji, and now he's going to die in an explosion with Zeke perhaps again. Like it's probably going to be a really good moment, and we'll be glad we got it. But I mean, all that just to he survived the explosion with Zeke just to die in another one, and then also I don't think we'll see Erwin Heaven again. That would be a little bit repetitive. But it's also kind of funky if we see Hanji got it, be like, hey, why didn't Levi get there? So.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true. Huh.
Also, we'll never see his cool battle scars if he just dies without ever taking his bandages off. Or he'll take his bandages off and we see his skull for
the
one
poor
chapter before
yaoi
he dies.
fangirls.
And as a Tumblr person who actively reads other Tumblr blogs, people wanting that Acker talk, if Levi dies without at least just telling Mikasa she's not a slave, like people will riot on Tumblr. Like
I think we got enough of an Acker talk back in the Uprising arc. Like they had a whole
Yeah, you think
conversation in the
there's
carriage.
Acker talk?
I'm just saying, I'm telling you what I read. What I read is Acker talk when. Like that's still something that people
Never.
read.
I'm
I mean,
sorry,
they
kids.
talked about their Ackerman powers when they awakened, and like they talked about it. I don't know.
Right, but Mikasa has since learned that she's a slave, or she believes that Ackerman's like she's very confused about her biology, and Levi's the would be a great person to set her straight
Yeah, but
about.
he doesn't know anything about it. He could just talk about his own experiences, but he doesn't know anything about the biology.
They have a shared history. They have that same liege knight
They're from the
relationship.
same family.
It would have been. It's something. It was on my wish list. Okay, that's all. Levi
I think it would have
and
been really nice. Like, I think it would have been a nice way to do it. At this point, I think that Mikasa realizing that she can make her own choices is going to happen out in another way, just because
yeah.
I'm not sure that that will matter. But I do think that I just don't think we have time. I mean, not that it won't matter, just like I don't think we have time. But I do think should Levi die, which I do think is more likely than not, even if I think that narratively either way could work. I think that it would be impartially to motivate Mikasa to kill Eren. So, like Hanji's death motivated Armin.
Yeah, I would like them to have a conversation.
Me too.
I think it would be nice.
Yeah, I think it'd be nice if we at least get a little bit more clear answers on what the acronyms are, other than just Titan experiments.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wish that if we had gotten some more info, we would have gotten that a little bit earlier. I feel like if we're getting it now, it's going to be weird.
Yeah, I agree.
Unless it's like some sort of epilogue thing, like God knows how long the epilogue is going to be, so...
Yeah, I've leaned more away from, with Isayama's new constant 1 to 2%, apparently that translates to like 2.5 chapters. And
Yeah.
so I'm not leaning 138 anymore, which would be 4, but I'm
Yeah.
leaning 137 just as a double length final chapter, because I think that's pretty common for final chapters.
Yeah.
The magazine's publishes the last chapter every month. So like this month magazine has 133 again and 134. So they have the page space that SNK owns. So yeah, the number would line up, but then we get the same amount of content page-wise in the volume.
I think Isayama's about as good at math as I am.
Isayama has been saying that like he's a certain percent done for a while.
Yeah.
Well, we know that earlier it was like what 3 to 4% or something.
Yeah, and I think he's already gone beyond that. So
yeah,
I think I mean I do think as well that like 3 chapters is about my bet, but we'll see. 4 is possible. I hope for 4 because I think it's a little rushed.
Well, the good thing is this podcast is still going on. We thought this would be like our penultimate month, but we still we're gonna keep going for a little while longer. You're gonna be stuck with me, Momtaku, for a little while longer.
I'll take it, Luna. Well, I was excited at the thought that we would be done with it this year, but I'm in good company. So the company's good and we got something to talk about. So we'll keep going. Hamliet, you followed a lot of anime or manga series to completion. Do you have any idea when he'll announce when the final chapter is? What's been the case for you and your other fandoms?
I don't want to talk about how most of them have ended.
Okay. Good enough.
Okay. So I have not really I think the main one that I can think of is like Tokyo Ghoul, but even then Ishida, the mangaka, had said that he ended it certainly before he initially planned due to health reasons. And so I don't necessarily think that that's a good place from which to guess from which I can guess when it's about to end. My best bet is like 3 to 4 chapters.
And he may not even announce it until the last one?
I actually think he will announce it either in December when it was supposed to finish. But also COVID, keep in mind like COVID meant that we had a month off this year. So I think he would announce it either in December or in January, probably the one before, or either with 1 or 2 left. Because I know when Tokyo Ghoul ended, they told us there were 4 more chapters coming. Other mangas tend to do the same thing where it's like, oh, okay, we have a few more chapters.
And that was a weekly though.
Exactly,
I'm not sure if
which is
monthlies
why
are different.
it might just be 1 more.
like the ending editor note, like this one said like the fight begins or whatever, might just be next month, the final chapter.
Yeah, right.
I wouldn't be surprised if we get that.
Yeah. I think Isayama doesn't even know at this point for sure.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I'm at too. If he knew he was going to finish in 4 chapters, I think the event in Hita would have been the time to announce that. But he still sounds a little uncertain. And I think it's because of character deaths that he's uncertain. He might think he can give Levi a big emotional send-off in half a chapter, and it doesn't. So maybe in his planning process, he has like 40 double page spreads that he can start picking away at if he needs to actually tell more story or something.
So we have one more question from Twitter from Sofia Amundsen. Do you think Connie or Jean will get an impactful scene at least? And who would kill Zeke? The first one to attack him wasn't Levi, but Reiner, and we know he's Isayama's favorite, so maybe he changes the course of events. So, first question first. Will Connie or Jean get some time in the limelight?
If Connie dies, I'm sure he'll die well. I think Jean should have some time in the limelight, but I'm not sure how much we have for that, because I do think the bulk of the time needs to be Armin and Mikasa.
Yeah, I think it's mainly going to be them just like helping out. I mean, just a few minutes ago, I had a breakdown of how I thought the battle was going to go, and it's easier to predict when people have like a specific power set. Like, oh, Peek has the bombs, Levi has Ackerman powers, and he has the clear arc with Zeke. All those pieces, you can kind of guess how they're going to go at least a little bit. Connie and John, they don't really have anything particular to do other than just help. So it's like either they'll just help take out a few Colossals somehow, they'll just help find or get to Zeke, or they'll just help get to Eren. I don't see any big role. I mean, I hope I'm wrong. I hope they have something bigger to do. And I agree, John would be more of a priority for me than Connie. But I can't think of anything myself that is a clear role for them to play.
Yeah, Jean needs to live to the epilogue and hold that baby.
Yeah. I mean, you guys all know. I mean, I think, well, at least Momtaku knows what I think is going to be the case with John. So,
John Casa.
yeah, I don't, and I'm not even saying that as someone who ships it, because I don't. Like, it's just where I think the story, like, it was introduced to the story, so it shouldn't matter. So,
I agree, and I'll also say it as someone who does ship it.
okay, all right, yes.
Yeah, I don't ship it either, but I also I know when you were talking on the topic, Hamliet, I would always read and nod and
Yeah,
agree
I'm
with
not
you when
like
people would
opposed
ask
to
me.
it. I'm just like,
Yeah.
whatever. Like, I mean, I assume it's where I've always thought the series would end. So,
Well, I always felt like it had to end with Mikasa having a child just because that's what was hinted at early on. So if the series doesn't, so it's weird to me that Historia is the one that's apparently pregnant, but
You
Okay.
mentioned Mikasa early on. You had thoughts on her needing to have a child, maybe based on like her scene with her mom and dad. I was
mm,
just reading a thread on Reddit earlier today, a thread from like 3 years ago, about who are the worst parents in SNK, and one of the top comments was a joke from Komorsky, one of the Reddit users,
Yeah.
oh, I love
saying Mikasa's dad, the bastard, never told her where babies come from.
I like that.
Oh, do you guys want to discuss who's going to kill Zeke? Levi or Reiner? Like it was part of the question.
I'm kind of with, I think Puppet's plan makes sense with Peek and Levi, but I don't really know.
So you think Peek and Levi would most likely kill Zeke?
I guess. I'm actually not so sure that Zeke is going to be killed.
Yeah, I'm not either.
And I know, like, I'm kind of like, meh, probably, but who knows? But I know, like, Link Spooky, who was on this podcast last time, is like firmly believes Zeke is going to survive to the end just out of like Isayama spiting us. But I actually think that there's a significant chance that is exactly what's going to happen. So
I have hopes for Zeke. Like, this is another character that I've kind of done a little bit of a 180 on, but only it just depends. I keep hoping for a twist. How about a twist with Zeke?
I would hope he does something to like try to help stop Eren. That's like,
I would love a redemption.
yeah, I also don't know that I think that there's much for Levi in killing him at this point. I'm kind of like, I don't know. I know that that's controversial, but I've never really been a fan of that theory for at least like the past like 20 chapters. So I'm kind of wondering, like, I just don't know that that accomplishes a whole lot.
But it's his gay promise.
I just want Levi to feel fulfilled and like he mattered. Whatever Levi needs to do to feel like he did something that mattered.
I think that's fair.
And I do think that, must kill monkey is certainly there, but he's on the humanity train as well.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I think the promise is
Yeah.
another example of something being dragged on too long. We were talking about earlier, like Annie and Historia, people just get tired of it. I mean, I'm personally still invested, and I know a lot of people are, but also it's just become a bit of a meme at this point. there's some things Isayama, it's like it's a good idea originally, but he drags it on for so long. Everyone's just kind of tired of it and is like, okay, can you do that now?
Yeah.
Well, if he was going somewhere by, making it last this long before he could fulfill the promise, in the sense that he would like let go of his need to fulfill it, or like he couldn't because someone else or something else killed Zeke, that's fine. But
I think his need to fulfillment is kind of divorced from the situation right now if they do think it'll stop the rumbling. Because then it's just he's doing it. I mean, he's probably fueled by his promise and want hate for Zeke as well. But I mean, if he thinks it's going to stop the rumbling and that's his goal, he's not going to be
yeah.
like, well, I want to stop the rumbling, but also I'm giving up on my promise, and so he won't do it and
Yeah.
just let the world die for his own humanity or something. So only if they came to the quick conclusion it would be useless, then I could see him struggling with it. But until then, I don't think that's going to be a big point of contention.
Yeah. I'm just saying that would make it like make sense why it lasted so long, like before Levi would be able to do something, like really act on that promise.
I think it's just plot necessity of Isayama needing Zeke around this long. He couldn't have Levi kill him yet.
I do like a point that Nitaku made on one of his last podcasts that Isayama does has this tendency, not with the female characters, but with the guy characters, to just sort of drag them around with nothing to do. And it would probably be better if he left them elsewhere, either completely out of the story or, just having Levi drug around, Connie drug around with very little, just background props is a little frustrating.
Well, you can send a letter of complaint to their customer service. Yeah, and as far as Reiner is concerned, I think you will find out that this Beast Titan is not Zeke, or at least not. It's not going to stop the rumbling. So, and I don't think Reiner is necessarily going to be the one to kill Zeke. I feel like other people deserve that more.
Yeah. So we did get a few more questions and comments from Twitter. This is a comment from our friend Paris. He said, Chapter 134 was outstanding. For me, it brought back the horror and dread that AOT first inspired me back in 2013. The scene of the baby being passed back by the crowd as humanity is being driven off the cliff is burned into my mind. Armin's last words were fire, fire. And, like when I read things like that from Paris, I'm like, yeah, you know what? I can see it. Like I know I was disappointed, but it objectively looking at it when I step away from my disappointment and how I thought things would go, I appreciate it. And then we have Rubygus, who is a regular on in our Twitter channel and also somebody that I talk to on Tumblr. What a chapter. I don't know what to ask that hasn't already been done so, but looking forward to all your thoughts on 134 and breaking down the highlights. So thank you to Paris and Rubygus for your comments. And then Paris did have a question which we kind of sort of touched on. Do you think that the Curse of the Titans will get passed on to Historia's child, or does it all end here on the battlefield? And I think all of us agree that it ends here on the battlefield. Is that correct?
Yes, but I also think it is possible that I think I mentioned this early on, that I do think it's possible that both is the answer.
Yeah. I hadn't considered that, but when people say it, I like, yeah.
And I don't hope that happens. In fact, I hope that it doesn't, because it just seems unnecessary to me, but I don't know. So
It seems strange that we were told about that thing about the shuffleborn shifter that, a baby will inherit it if it's not correctly passed on. And, we've never seen it happen.
and
So,
just as a bunch of Titans are fighting, a baby is being born.
Ah,
Like a baby
Yeah.
yeah. It's possible. I don't think that I would count on it, but I don't think that I would write it off either. But I do think it will still end on the battlefield regardless. So
Yeah, that's where I'm at as well. I'm like 50-50 on whether it'll end or not, and whether I want the Titan Curse to end or not, from a narrative standpoint. I do think if it does end, it won't be as simple as someone snapping their fingers and no more Titans, because if that's revealed as a possibility, that, that's like what Mom was talking about earlier about other solutions. So if Eren could have just always done that, that kind of, I mean, that doesn't necessarily solve the problem with the world, but it feels like something he should have always had in his plan.
I wonder if Ymir Fritz is the one who can actually end it.
I wonder.
it would make sense to me.
Well, she wasn't the one who, like, she was bestowed these powers, right? By some other weird creature.
Right, but she's been the one making them apparently, so she just stopped making them. See, I solved the series.
Mm.
Woo!
I was thinking earlier today about time loop theory. The spine is in fact Eren.
I love how every chapter we come up with like worse time loop theories.
Oh.
So next chapter predictions.
I think Puppet covered it.
Yeah, I gave mine at least. I don't know if you guys have any different views on possibilities.
I've given up predicting specifics.
I think we'll get Historia's POV. I agree with you on that. I think it's time, but who knows? I am defeated. I appreciate it. Like, you guys did make me feel better and I really enjoyed this, but yeah, I'm like defeated when it comes to the series and how it's going to go. All right, so I think that finishes up our chapter discussion unless you guys have anything else.
Nope.
Okay. Well, I also wanted to mention this is our last podcast before the season 4 anime premiere. So, lots to talk about coming up about that.
Yeah, I'm super excited for it myself, and I saw the wiki tweet poll question that we then stole for our poll about whether you're more excited for chapter 135 or the final season. I don't remember what the wiki's result was, but ours at the moment is 57% for chapter 135 and 42% for the final season.
Wow, I'm kind of surprised.
I think that just goes to show how excited people are over this chapter and the cliffhanger and what's to come.
Yeah.
If this were like chapter 126 or something like that, people would be like, "Oh, season 4." I don't care about this.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I
what
think you're
about
right.
you guys? What about you guys? What are you more looking forward to?
I mean, I started Attack on Titan through watching the anime and then read the manga, but in general, I infinitely prefer reading to watching things. So,
Yeah.
I'm clearly more excited about the upcoming manga chapters, also. But I am very much looking forward to watching season 4. Yeah, definitely that chapter for me.
Puppet?
This is tough for me because I expect some big things from next chapter, but I think I'm going to have to go with the anime because of how much I obsess over it. I've talked before about how I do the episode predictions, like laying out how the manga I think will adapt into the anime. And I've spent way more hours on that than any sane person should. So I'm really interested to see how that pans out. Right now I'm pretty much torn between whether it'll be 2 core or 3 core. It could really fit either. It's definitely going to be a little bit of an extended season, like probably about 28 to 30 or 31-ish episodes. But I mean, that could be 2 long cores or 3 short cores. So I'm not really sure. We might be able to tell when we see the first OP if it mainly focuses on Marley and that's it, and it's probably going to be 3 core because it'd be weird to have that OP over like the first half of the stuff with the 104th Imperatus and the Jaeger stuff. But if it focuses on a lot on like Eren and Zeke and shows the 104th even, then it's a little more possible that we could get just like 15 episodes that go up to the Levi Zeke explosion and then take a halfway break.
Luna, I'm going to guess. Can I guess and say that you're more excited about season 4?
Yeah, you're right.
Okay.
Now, you know why.
I suck at series predictions, but boy, I got Luna down.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited for season 4 because finally we're getting some merchandise for the Warriors. Like, we've been waiting for what, 3 years for this?
Yeah.
Oh,
I just
it's
want Gabby merch, honestly.
yeah, there is some Gabby merch coming, right? The Animate Cafe has some like cute chibis, including Gabby and Falco and Reiner. And Mappa has a nice Reiner acrylic figure. So I'm hoping there will be more good stuff coming. And I'm really excited for the Marley arc because it's really my favorite arc in the entire series. So even though it has its
Awesome.
faults, I love it. I can't wait. And I'm very curious to see what the art style will be in full motion. 'Cause we've only seen that really short trailer or teaser actually So
Yeah.
I've been watching Jujutsu Kaisen this season, a new shonen show that's done by
Oh
Mappa,
yeah, I've
and the
heard of
animation
it.
it's really, really solid. So I'm pretty hopeful for season 4.
Yeah, and Mappa
Uh,
has done other really good like action oriented shows like Banana Fish
Yeah.
as
I love
well.
Mappa Studio.
Yeah, I think I've loved everything I've seen by them.
as far as merchandise goes, I'm a big pop figure collector, the
Me
Pop Funkos.
too.
ah.
I have like
I have
100
the
of
whole
them.
Yeah, I have like 80 or so, and I
Oh
have the whole
Jesus.
Attack on Titan. I have the whole Attack on Titan wave, and there are a lot of big characters that don't have figures yet.
Yeah.
John, Connie, none of the warriors besides Annie. Reiner better get one. Make it some post-time skip designs. There's a bunch to cover, so I don't think we'll get to like Falco and Gabby and Peak, but
No.
hopefully we at least get some basic ones like Reiner and John, because
Yeah.
I really like them.
I really want a Gabby Funko before the end of it. I'm just like, please.
Let's hope she becomes an anime favorite. She wasn't. I doubt it, but we'll
They
see.
do like
Maybe.
some really interesting choices with who they decide to make figures of. So.
Yeah.
I'm shocked by this conversation. I had no idea Annie had a figure and Reiner didn't. That's shocking.
Yeah, Annie's figure was announced before Armin's.
Wow.
They tend to do whoever's most important in an arc. For the season 3 wave, they had Kenny and Emir and Krista and Erwin, who, I mean, Emir wasn't in season 3 that much, but Krista and Kenny specifically are pretty, I don't want to say minor characters, obviously, but they don't have a ton to do after that arc. And so you have to get Emir and Kenny and Krista before we get John and Reiner is pretty surprising. I hope we end up getting all of them because I want all of them.
Well, that makes me hopeful for at least Reiner then.
I'm holding out for Flock.
Flock is the kind of character that just might get one. That would be.
I feel like he's the one I can't buy him. I just can't.
I would buy him and then I would toss him in some sort of bowl outside and set him on fire and watch him melt and do a time lapse and upload that to YouTube.
So Hamliet, you don't know this, but Puppet is our Flock stan, and yes, so
I build a shrine around the Flock figure.
yes.
Hanji's is by far the coolest one, though.
I have Hanji, Kenny, Erwin, and hang on, I gotta look.
You have the season 3 Erwin, right? Without the arm.
Yeah, that's the Erwin they have without the arm.
And Kenny is very cool, but yeah, I'm with you. I love Hanji's. Erwin's is cool too, but he's kind of predictable. So I'm kind of torn on this question as well. Like the best thing for me about the season is when we get the OP and just that first episode. So I am probably more looking forward to the season 4 premiere than I am chapter 135, but I expect it'll just be like a little 1 episode enthusiasm bump, and then I'll be more excited about the upcoming chapter. So I cannot wait.
For me, every episode's exciting because I've thought about how they might adapt each episode so much. Every little detail they do is like, oh, that's an interesting choice, and it's like a reveal to me almost. But the first episode, like you said, is exciting because of the OP. Then we have a few fine episodes, and then we have the festival, and that's going to be some good stuff.
So do you have any predictions you want to make for the first episode?
The first episode is one of the most solid ones of my predictions. That's probably just going to be 91 and 92, which is, the intro to Falco and all them after the time skip. And then we get the fight with Peak and the Jaw Titan and Reiner and Beast showing up in the Titan Ring.
I wonder if we'll get the sneak peek of, Eren being there at Fort Slava.
That'll be so easy to tell in the anime because he talks, but a word bubble obscures him in the manga. There's no word bubbles here, and you can hear his voice.
Yeah, I think they'll just show him from the back. They won't show him talking, I'm guessing.
Oh, have the scene where he's watching them, but then cut out the scene where Falco helps him.
Or maybe, I don't know, maybe Kajiyuki will put on a different voice. We'll see.
Puppet, do you share your episode predictions anywhere? I know you are very, very detailed about this, and I always enjoy hearing them. And when I have a question about what's going to happen in any given anime season, you're my go-to guy. Are they going to be on Reddit, or is it more just a Discord thing?
So yeah, I've shared them on Reddit a few times in the past, but the manga predictions, it changes so much. I have 9 different versions. So it's like, they might go mainly for cliffhangers. Like they might want to end on 114 with the explosion, 116 with the Eren. What's that scene where Reiner and them show up in the blimps and start the assault on Paradis? But then there's other versions where I'm like, the episodes, like for time constraints, make sense better being 114, 115. So I have all this, like these different approaches. And so since I changed it so much, there's not a version I'm most confident in to post. So yeah, it's mainly just for my own thoughts right now.
Okay. Well, I will be asking my questions to you regardless. So, and if you do end up with like a Word document posted somewhere, a Google Drive, whatever, be sure to let us know.
Will do. I might post them just before the season premiere.
The only other big news was the statue unveiling
True.
at Hito. And I think information about that is still coming in. I really do hope somebody puts together a master post of like all the questions that were asked, all the artwork that he made during that Q&A with his friends. So I've seen bits and pieces of it, but not like one whole, this is what happened.
Yeah, I'm sad that the live stream was privated because I was asleep while they did the live streams. I was hoping I could watch it again in the morning, but
Oh.
no such luck, unfortunately. Did you guys watch the whole thing, or?
I watched the whole thing.
I had it on one screen and Joe Biden's acceptance speech on the other screen.
I did too. I had my AirPods in, and I had the live stream on my phone, and I had Joe Biden on the TV, and I was like, yeah,
Biden was like a half hour late, which worked
which
out
was
because I was able to see
perfect.
most of the meat of the thing. Yeah.
I thought about you because I know it was like the choice of Biden or the statue unveiling, and I was like, I was so grateful that they ran late, like because I got to see like at least the statue. I got to see
Yeah.
most of it before, before that took over.
Well, you guys should have gone with the whole statue unveiling because I told you, like, I can see Joe Biden's acceptance speech everywhere. Cannot see the live stream again. Aw.
But I do hope we get, like, a comprehensive post of everything, like, all the questions, all the art, because 'cause I'm seeing bits and pieces of it, and I'm sure I'm missing something good.
Yeah.
The ones I have seen are, like, older 20-year-old Marco was drawn and, lots of different characters, and Levi without his bandages, and questions about Levi and Erwin's ages came up, apparently,
Wait,
so
there was one of Levi without his bandages. Does it have his scar?
yes, and his eye,
I need that in my life.
What?
he has a whole eye, so it's possible he did not lose his vision.
I'm gonna need to see that ASAP
Yeah,
when this
same.
is done.
Okay. So yeah, it'd be nice to get all that. And we haven't talked with Coffee Life about it yet, but I think Luna, our intention is to try to get her soon to, because she was actually there in the audience, and it would be
True.
nice to hear her. So I guess that's a stay tuned sort of thing. She only just got back in town and probably is still going through photos, but hopefully we can do what we've done in the past and just go through the photos and let her talk about that experience.
Yeah, so I don't know if we'll do like a recording of it or we'll do a live stream, but we'll let you guys know through our usual channels.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure we haven't even talked to Coffee about doing something, but I'm sure she's game.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm looking forward to her story. I did ask her, like, because in the pictures, Isayama looked a bit frail again, and he was
Mhm.
back to that god awful haircut he had a couple years ago before he got married. So I was like, oh, he's not looking so well. And she was like, yeah, I thought he looked thin too in real life, but she thought maybe it was the suit he was wearing, so she wasn't sure. I don't know. I've gained 15 pounds during COVID. He looks like he lost 15 pounds.
I thought he looked really frail as well, like, shockingly, but it could have been the suit. The black is slimming.
He needs to relax and onsen. That's what he needs.
He needs the
Apparently,
onset.
he looks he looks stressed and
Mhm.
tired.
She did say he was really cute with his fans, though, so I cannot wait to do a conversation with her.
And he waved back at her when she waved to him.
That's what she said.
Yeah. All right. So, to
Dun, dun,
hopefully
dun.
Puppets great enjoyment, Polka has come through with the quickfire.
Awesome.
All right, quick fire round. You know how this goes, Hamliet?
I've listened to it, so
Good.
yeah.
Okay, so first, let's decide the order. Puppet, then Hamliet, then Momtaku, then me.
Okay.
Baby or haha pie? Which is the better meme so far?
Haha pie.
Haha pie.
Haha pie.
Haha pie. Eren or Reiner?
Eren.
Eren.
Reiner.
Reiner. Annie or Falco?
Falco.
Annie.
Falco.
Falco. Peak or Onyankopon?
Peak.
Onyankopon.
Ooh, I think Peak is gorgeous. Anya Kapan is gorgeous too. Anya Kapan.
Peak. And he cannot spell Onyankopon, so maybe he has been drinking. Levi or Zeke?
Zeke.
Levi.
Levi.
Zeke. Oh. Reiner's mom or Historia's mom?
Polka. Ah,
Oh, sorry, mum, because it's English.
I'm going with Reiner's mom. She's worse. I mean, not sorry. I'm going with Reiner's mom.
She's worse.
Historia's mom is worse, and Alma never repented. So
I would echo that. I'm going with Karina, and it kills me to say that. But at least she somewhat redeemed herself. And yeah.
I'm going with Alma. She always felt very tragic to me, and I would defend her before I would defend Karina.
No, I'm gonna go with Karina because at least she made Reiner feel
I
love.
thought you were just gonna say she made Reiner.
No, I'm gonna go with Karina because I don't think Alma ever gave Historia the idea that she was loved by her mother.
I also don't know how much Alma. I don't know. I question how much Alma had choices. So
I do too. There was like the power imbalance in that situation. I mean, it's possible she was a gold digger. It's also possible she was just a real tragedy.
It could be. We don't know enough.
Yeah.
But just based on the fact of how they love their children, I can at least say Karina seemed to love Reiner.
I would say though that Alma, I don't want to debate this too much, but Alma never gave she never gave Historia the time of day, which is almost a little better than like manipulating your kid. She never.
Oh my god. Okay. Next
don't
question.
They're both awful. Thank you, Polka. This is lovely.
Right? We had such a lovely podcast, and now we're gonna all, argue on Twitter. Which was your favorite custom culture shown in the destruction scenes? I'm guessing he's talking about Black London and the Asian culture.
Which might be Hizuru. We'll call it Hizuru.
Yeah.
Black London.
I liked both. I'm not choosing.
I loved Black London.
Yeah, Black London for sure.
I want to go visit.
Ooh, okay. Alliance victory, Eren victory, or stalemate?
Alliance victory.
Alliance victory.
Alliance victory.
Yeah, Alliance. Yay! Okay, we can agree on something. That's good. Momtaku, you're gonna love this one. Eren is the father, Farmer Kun is the father, fake pregnancy, or other.
Eren is the father.
Farmer.
You just destroyed every goodwill you had, Puppet, wouldn't you?
Right.
I'm staying on fake pregnancy. You can't make me change my mind.
Yeah, I'm going with Farmer Kun.
Puppet, you ruined me so bad. Luna with her heaven's not real, and now you with Eren as the daddy. Y'all
I'm not
wonder why I'm
strong in it.
depressed.
This is the QuickFire round. You do what you gotta do.
Why I'm depressed. Okay, next.
Connie or Rico, who is more relevant? And then just in between brackets, it's not Connie.
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 Yeah, Connie.
Polka was like on fire this time.
Yeah.
This was good.
Okay. Polka's hot takes. Do you agree the destruction and cliff scenes were the only great part of this chapter, and the rest was okay at best?
No, not at all.
Fundamentally disagree.
Do not agree.
Dude, Reiner transforming was the best scene, duh. So disagree. And it kind of ends on a lame note. He says asks how many chapters at most do you think are left? But we kind of already discussed that. Do we think this is going to continue for like a whole nother year?
No.
No.
Okay, good.
So,
Yeah.
Puppet, you think 3 chapters, but the 3rd chapter being double length.
Yeah, that's my current bet. Just either that or 4.
I say
Okay.
3 or 4 as well. 4 being like if the question is which one, what is the most number, I say 4.
I could see it going to 5, but 5 being like an epilogue sort of thing.
And I agree with Luna on that. I still think there's too much to tidy up. If characters are gonna die, he needs time for those, and they take a lot of time.
I could see that, yeah.
Not if he puts them all in one chapter.
There's no way Levi dies as one of the men. Maybe I'm wrong.
I
who
mean,
knows?
if Connie dies, nobody cares, so that's a quick bet.
Was that it?
That was it. Yeah, that was the quickfire.
All right.
So
Good one, Polka. Very good.
yeah, you destroyed some new friendships. I'm very glad that you pulled through.
It was the perfect quickfire for this chapter because,
True.
just depressed me even more. Great. Well, that's it. Thanks for listening to our podcast. I want to thank my friends Puppet and Hamliet so much for being with us. This, I was saying during one of our breaks, this is probably the most relaxed I've been during a podcast in a long time because I just knew you guys were going to be incredible. And I thought you were. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. It's been really fun.
We've had Puppet back several times. I hope, like we were talking about, to get everyone back again before this ends. So we'd like to thank everyone for listening. If you'd like to support the podcast, we do have a Patreon and Ko-fi, but I think the best way that you can support us is just by letting us know that you're listening and that you're enjoying it. So you can send us a comment on YouTube or something.
I fully second that. That being said, I do want to thank this month's Patreons, mostly Silarana and I'm just going to call you Tom because that's the easiest way for me to pronounce it. Thank you so much for your generous donations. Hopefully, we'll be making some changes to the podcast and actually put your money to good use. We're still looking forward to transcribing our podcast, so thank you so much for making that possible. And as always, thank you, Simon, Taryn, and Kenny as well. Your support helps us a lot. It helps keep this podcast running. We really appreciate it. So,
yeah, thank all of you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you for offering your hearts and your ears. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.